Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dauphin.
So you've probably heard me talk about our online bit course before. We are about to start another masterclass here in the next 2 or 3 weeks toward the latter part of February. So now's the time. If you're not on our email list, I would highly suggest that you go to the foamy mouth video we've got a link to in the comments. You just wait there a minute, pop-up will come up, put in your email, you're on the newsletter list, and it'll sign you up to get that 30-minute video. That will give you an idea of the type, quality, and depth of information that we're going to be presenting to you throughout this course. I really don't think you're going to find most of it anywhere else, and this is definitely the best information out there on bits, and there's way more to this than you think that there is. I promise. We've got some great feedback from previous groups. This will be the first group to go through with the new 7th module that is more aimed at the people getting certified to do consultations. It's going to include some of the transitions, watching me do these on a horse. It's going to show the steps I would go through if I were evaluating a horse, plus using some of the different training aids that we don't cover. So things like martingales, driving a horse, sidelines, kind of the best ways to do the worst things, so to speak. We're also going to have a couple of webinars coming up in the near future where we'll give sort of a brief presentation on an overview of the course, what it's like, the things that'll be covered, and I'll answer some questions and stuff. We're going to do several of those, so no matter what time zone you're in, you can participate and get a glimpse of what's inside if you're curious. We are going to run more master classes, of course, but the next one won't be until May. So if you miss this window, you won't be able to start with everybody else. The way that it works, we have 7 modules. We're going to go 7 weeks, and each week you're going to get the information. Toward the end of the week, we're going to go over that in the Zoom call. So there's a 70-page study guide that goes with the course. So we'll go over the pages of the study guide that are applicable to that week's module. You can ask me questions. That is recorded. The recording is put back into the course, so if for whatever reason you can't catch that week or you're in an odd time zone and it doesn't match up, you can email me your question ahead of time. I will read it and answer it, and then you can go back later and watch the recording. You have access to all of that information for a year. You can, once we're done with it, you can then apply and test to get certified by us to do bidding consultations. If you're a professional trainer or anybody like that, this is a no-brainer. This is going to really change what you're doing and just send you ahead years of learning things the hard way, and the placebo effects and biases and bad information that you may never figure out was bad information. So here's your chance. Follow us on social media. Join up for the newsletter. We've also got another newsletter for DauphinHorsemanship.com that's not just exclusively bit content. Please go to both websites, sign up for both, check out what we've got. Looking forward to seeing you in the course, or at least at the webinar. I'll also say we are constantly looking for new clinic hosts. I have got more weeks throughout the year that I would like to book with clinics. That's pretty much my favorite thing to do. That way I get to have the face-to-face contact with you and your horses. Additionally, we have got some spots for virtual lessons. So if you might be interested in what a virtual lesson entails, they're pretty economical. It is, your time. You get my attention fully on you and your horse for that period of time. I don't much care what we do. We can work on anything you want. I even do some bit consultations that way. Take me in your tack room and show me what you got. All it really takes is a smartphone, a tripod, and some Bluetooth earbuds, and we can make it work. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me. My email, daniel@dauphinhorsemanship.com. All right. How are you?
I'm awesome. It's been forever. How have you been?
It doesn't seem like it's been forever. We just did your podcast here not that long ago. You just missed me. That's all. You missed the back and forth. All right.
Absolutely. Well, in the space for just ridiculous irreverence.
There you go. I think we're going to have another cool conversation. I really do. I am kind of throwing new, like I didn't take that long to put those lightning round or icebreaker, I need to call them, because they're not a lightning round. Sometimes they take an hour and 20 minutes to get through.
Right.
But anyway, I think I got some fun ones for you there.
Good.
Making sure I got all my ducks in a row here before
I
we
got an
start.
icebreaker. I got an icebreaker question for you too, so we'll weave it in.
Okay, absolutely. I like it. Can I ask you the painting behind you? I've now seen that a few times. Is that something you did, or just art you've collected? Or okay, do you do
Yeah.
any artwork like that or anything? Or
I have done some drawings, like pencil drawings that I absolutely love. They're actually on my Facebook page. There's an album under photos called Drawings, and one of them is a woman and her horse, a woman in Australia. And there are others that are just photos that popped up, and I was so compelled. I wanted to learn how to draw. So that was about a year and a half of my life, those photos.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're going to run out of things to talk to. We have a pretty easy way of finding a new little path and all of that stuff. I think I'm good. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't know what it is. I got the sponsor. We got the questions. I kind of have an outline here. I think we're all right. We'll just see what happens, right?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Either which way this goes, we're having a better day than Leslie Desmond. Yes. So,
oh, man.
just to let everybody know what I'm talking about right here, Leslie Desmond has been on the podcast. She's a friend. She is the author of, I think, one of the best horse books ever written. And she did recently suffer a tragedy. She was driving down the road coming back from an event, and her truck, which also had her camper on the back, caught fire. She had to bail and narrowly escaped real problems there, but her truck and camper and everything were a total loss. And so they've started a GoFundMe for her. So if you want to help Leslie out, we will have a link to her GoFundMe in the show notes. We are actually, you're well north of the fires. Is that right?
That's right.
We are fixing to have, they're predicting between 12 and 15 inches of snow where I am, 20 miles north of the Gulf of Mexico. Like, we're going to have a full-on blizzard, 35-mile-an-hour winds, a foot of snow, and it could be really bad. Like, our roofs are not designed for snow load, so it's like
Right.
we're in a maybe it's nothing, but we seem to be having an awful lot of these 500-year events in the last 10 years. There's been quite a few. Looking
Yeah.
for white horses and lions and lambs laying down next to one another.
Yeah, for sure.
Before long.
For sure.
Introducing you, you've got Generation of Harmony and Intuitive Learning Foundation. Is there any other title I need to be aware of or throw in there, or that'll do it? Okay.
That'll do it. The Compass Conversations podcast is now a project of the Intuitive Learning Foundation and might be expanding in scope as such.
Okay.
I scare myself, Daniel.
You're keeping busy. Yeah, I understand. It gets to be a lot sometimes, but that's how it's supposed to be, right? Do you know, obviously you would know who Picasso is. Do you have any idea how prolific an artist he was?
Probably not. I know very little about him, but what makes you bring him up?
He created, I forget the number. It's something astronomical, something like 80,000 works of art, and it averaged out to like 8 a day.
Wow.
Or something. I mean, like, he wasn't a year and a half on the Mona Lisa. He was cranking stuff out like there was no tomorrow. You know, so it is interesting how prolific some people can be. That it's just, pumping out of them. Elon Musk kind of stuff, like he's done what 9 impossible things, and he's 42 or something. I mean, it's just
yes. Well, it speaks so much to like the human expectation of what we should be capable of. Like, oh no, what, you work 30 years at a job you hate, and then you retire and you get, sedentary and blah, blah, blah. Like, whoa. No, wait, how about no? How about there's an amazing world here? How about show me more? And then, the part that is me scaring myself is when I start to see that evolution that's beyond who I thought I was. And it's related to horses, actually. Anyway, I don't know if you want me to go into it now or save it to weave it in, but
No, I'm kind of thinking I may break from pattern and we'll keep some of this conversation
okay.
and then we'll just roll into the introduction and all. So anyway, sometimes the best conversations happen when you didn't intend for it. So that's okay. Yep. It doesn't have to all be so structured. I'm the informal guy who does clinics with Hawaiian shirts on. So why should I feel bound to this structure that I myself have created just completely arbitrarily? So we're just going to roll with it.
I love it. Good.
With that in mind, I am talking today with Kerri Lake, who, of course, has Generation of Harmony, also the Intuitive Learning Foundation, under which she produces a podcast that I was just privileged to be a guest on, Compass Conversations. And Kerri and I tend to have these very abstract, existential conversations, and so you're about to get another one. How are you this morning, Kerri?
Happy to be here. Always happy to be here and laugh together. And that's like the best part.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Keeping very serious, we're going to keep things very serious.
100%. I think the first question I have for you is going to set the tone here. So I have some new icebreaker questions since you've already answered the other ones, and they should evolve anyway. I don't want the same old dad jokes. So your first icebreaker question: what are the odds that all of those old Greek statues are really just victims of Medusa?
Wow, that's a really good question. That's really good. Well, here's did they all watch Clash of the Titans?
I don't know, but we did, and we didn't turn to stone. So maybe there's a digital barrier there that doesn't.
Right.
Yeah. It's really sad, the movies that kids these days don't watch, that like our pop culture references, because I mean, like Ghostbusters or something like how can you live your life without having seen that? I mean, just so many.
What about Weird Science? Right?
Yeah. The Princess Bride, my all-time favorite movie. If you don't know what inconceivable means in a conversation, or Six-Fingered Man, or Rodents of Unusual Size, how are you living your life? Like, you're really doing something wrong here, right?
Do you always begin conversations this way?
As you wish, Kerri, as you wish.
So good.
All right. What do you think about to go to sleep?
That's a tongue twister.
Literally or figuratively?
Well, figuratively, because it's probably also like a mixed metaphor. But if you want to know for reals, what I do when I go to sleep is contemplate Dzogchen Buddhist teachings.
Okay. So sleep for you is kind of a meditative state. You just get on a path and follow it, and it just takes you out into the
yes.
Nothing, the cloud, the dream world, all of it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, because it creates a space. It creates a space in consciousness, whether my thinking mind is online or offline. That's the direction my life is going, is that integration with wholeness, with whole consciousness. And whether that comes through Buddhist language and teachings and practices, or if it comes from a situation where somebody misunderstands you and you are figuratively crucified because of a misunderstanding, that's a absolutely amazing opportunity to transcend and get really clear, that it's not all about me. There's something else going on here. Show me what's real. Show me what's behind all of this.
So, have you heard the story about when the Dalai Lama went to New York City and ordered a hot dog?
And said, make me one with everything.
There you go. Very good.
No, I mean, I've never heard of it. What
Never heard that at
are you
all.
talking
Okay.
about? Okay, I have an icebreaker question for you.
Okay.
So you have a lot of experience teaching and clinicking and working with horses and people. And so my question is, in your experience, what color is red?
What color is red? I'm not quite sure how to approach that, Kerri. So I'll tell you my first thought on that. I wrote this a few years ago, and nobody seemed to find it funny, but I found it very funny. So the perception that we have of the wavelengths of light is called the Purkinje effect, so the rainbow spectrum. And I always tell this around Christmas time because red is the first wavelength of light that we lose perception of. Like if you do scuba diving, you get down 20, 30 feet and redfish aren't red anymore. Now they're blue or gray or something. And thus, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was the worst choice Santa could have possibly made because that red light does not penetrate the fog and the snowstorm and all. It's the worst wavelength of light that you could have had. So what color is red? How would you describe red? I will say red is one of my least favorite colors. So, you have personality kind of, I'm more of the cool, the blues, grays, greens kind of end of the spectrum is more you got the warmth. So maybe that means I'm a cold hearted bastard. And there's probably some, some truth to that. What, what would red be? And then what is hmm, there's a neurological condition where people like they'll associate sounds and things to numbers, and you know what I'm talking about, and
Mhm.
so like 7 could be red and smells like peanut butter or something like that to them.
Yeah,
So
they call it dysphagia.
uh-huh.
Um, yes, I'm familiar with that actually.
um I'm out of stuff. I don't know how to describe red any better than any of that.
That's perfect.
I feel
That's
like I'm just running a circle. I traveled but I went nowhere. How about that?
well, your contemplation on Rudolph's red nose was terribly enlightening. So thank you for that. I'm sure people have learned something.
Nobody has like I've done that a couple of times and it gets no views, no like. It's just like I'm out here by myself, but I was amused, and that really was the point, to be quite
That's what
honest. So
matters.
yeah.
That's what matters. I love it. Like at least I mean, I thought it was funny. That's kind of part of how I got myself through college is I had lots of things I thought were hysterically funny, and I would share them with people and be met with like a face that looked like a brown paper bag and then confusion. I'm like, oh, just trust. It's funny. Just please trust me. It's totally funny. It's so funny. Just trust me. And then crickets. So I don't know. You and I might have had some similar sense of humor. I don't know. I think mine might have been coming from a little bit different dimension, but everybody's unique.
I've had a few of those. I was often the class clown, but it's not home
Shocker.
runs every time. Yeah,
No,
sometimes they all laugh and sometimes it's kind of crickets, and yeah. But
sometimes you get kicked out of
yeah,
class. I'm just saying. I don't know.
I had the bad. So here I'll tell you, I was on the pre-vet track later on in college. I started in engineering, but they went pre-vet, which means you have all the medical classes, which also means you have to take organic chemistry, which is one of those hardest classes you're ever going to take in college. I had an organic chemistry professor with Tourette's syndrome.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, so and he had a big chip on his shoulder. I'm sure his younger life was not easy, and he was a very brilliant man. But his main goal was to weed out as many people he didn't deem worthy as possible. So it was one of those classes we start out with like 120 people, and there's 20 people by the time you get to the end. Like people are just bailing out of this left to right. And we got into talking about nylon, which is a replicated chain type molecule, and there's a nylon 5 and a nylon 6, so that you have this many units, either 5 or 6, and then it replicates. And I told a joke about weakest link of a chain being stuck in the mud, kind of made fun of him, and the whole class laughed at him. And I immediately realized that the highest priority there was not to make the class laugh. It was to not piss off the professor whose grade you're it was one of those, I accomplished the goal, but I lost the war kind of,
Oh
it was,
no.
yeah, an epically stupid. I remember having the in the middle of it, like, oh, I just really messed up. That was not good. Uh,
Yeah, being clever is not always it's not always going to get you where you want to go.
no, it is not.
I
And
have
not
noticed
everybody's
that as
sense of
well.
humor is the same
That's right.
level. So, okay. What makes you cranky?
Mm.
Are you a hangry kind of a person, or if you don't get 8 hours of sleep, or is there anything like that that if I don't get this done, I'm having a bad day tomorrow? Or
Oh no, nothing like that. Sometimes I notice if I am hungry, I can feel like, hey, my thoughts are working differently right now. Um, but the moment that I recognize it, then everything settles down inside, and then I eat when I can. But if we talk about cranky, that there's still when people are like learning new things and saying, yeah, I want to get from A to B, and then you watch them choose to go the completely opposite direction, like that when they get caught up in being mean to themselves or mean to each other or mean to their horses or mean, um that if I'm not like totally within myself, I still notice from time to time there's a knee jerk in my gut for when people say they want one thing, but they do exactly the opposite of what's going to get them there. And those are the moments I get to breathe and exhale and realize, okay, that's just unconscious. And how can I, what can I contribute here? But making me cranky, and this is just totally honest. I mean, I do the work that I do and facilitate people beyond all of this stuff, but I'm just being honest. My sweet little human still has a bit of a bruise in that realm. So when that bruise gets poked, I have a little bit of a gasp, and um, hopefully it's not too apparent to other people, because it is my own conversation to have with myself. But that's just being true, being honest.
do you think there's an expectation that you have to be perfect in order to be helpful to others? Like, would we not expect, let's say you're going to a professional counselor or something like that, is the fact that that counselor got a divorce mean that they're incapable of counseling a marriage in crisis? Or
Yeah.
does that person have to be perfect in order to be helpful? I mean, no, obviously, because none of us are, right? So,
Right. It's such an awesome thing to say. It's such an awesome thing to think about and actually to talk about with each other. Because I think, yes, I think it's pervasive that there's an expectation within ourselves that in order to be viable, to be worth something, we have to have completely mastered to the point where we make no mistakes, and we have it all under control and everything in hand. And so that makes me worthy of advising another. I must be perfect, not only in my own eyes, but in the eyes of other people who I could never know what they're seeing or looking at. But I must be able to project some version of perfection. And I think that that's definitely been part of my psyche. For a lot of us who grew up perhaps with narcissistic parents, or even just confusion, emotional confusion, not really understanding, behaviors that don't match the words. I mean, we've all got our unique situations, but that demand of some expectation of perfect I think it has it sits on a shelf in most people, well, at least in America, perhaps in England and other Western sort of places. But I think it's a fixture until we let ourselves look at it and take it down and dust it off and decide whether we want to put it back on the shelf or take it to Goodwill.
Do you have a standout horse memory?
The one that changed my life is it's the story of Dauphin, the little horse I met at the auction. Changed my life entirely in that moment. And it took months to really integrate what had happened. This was a little horse that I met at a livestock auction because I was there with a friend who wanted to buy a second backyard, pasture ornament companion horse. And at the end, the auction people ran this little horse into the auction yard. And he was clearly just like somebody had stuck his finger in a light socket. He was about 13 hands. Could have been actually pulled off of wild lands. He was small and scraggly and lanky and clearly traumatized, but I could feel him in his eyes. He was right there. He just, all this was happening, but he was right there. And the auctioneer started the bidding at 500. And he's going blah, 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 400, 300, 200, 100. And finally he slows down. And you could feel in the crowd, everybody's like, yeah, not for that thing, right? And he slows down and he just says, all right, guys, who's going to take this guy home for $50? And my hand went in the air and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Because, at the time I was trying to leave my marriage and I didn't really have a home of my own. I had no income, no anything, but now I just bought a $50 horse. And, with a horrific start in life, I didn't even own a halter. I paid the auction yard $7 for a plastic halter and had to go collect this horse from the paddock he was in. People along the way, like when I went into, I had to go to the ATM, get cash, then go pay for the horse. And the ladies in the office, when I said, yeah, I'm here for that, to pay for that guy. And they all looked at me with like horror. And they said, you be careful, honey. You just be careful. All right. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And on the way out, there's the wranglers walking past me saying that horse, it took 6 of us to put him in a trailer. So you let me know when you're ready and we'll rope him for you. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And, I wasn't worried. I just thought I'd go talk to the horse. And that's what I did. The magic of that day was not in, Kerri's just the greatest horse person, blah, blah, blah. It was in my ability to know how to communicate, my ability to let the horse see who I am and what I'm about and what I have planned, in the clarity and then the humility to acknowledge where I was not perfect, right, in the past with other horses. And, had I ever been bad to a horse? Yeah, I had, because that's what I was taught. And to let this horse know what I wanted to offer him, which we could call safety, I had to find it in myself. And if I was sitting there pretending I know what I'm doing and I'm not, anxious, and there's guys standing behind the pillars waiting to watch me die, right? I had to be honest with myself about all of that stuff. And then this little horse let me know. He just gave me his ear and he said, okay. I walked up to him, put the halter on him like we'd done it a million times before, and he followed me right into the trailer, like not a pound of pressure on the line. It was a little bit satisfying because, at the end, there were 6 cowboys sitting on the fence in silence, watching something they might not have seen before, might not have expected on that day. So it's a moment I go back to remember like what life actually is, what life actually feels like, what connection actually feels like. It's a really potent memory. And it's all because of horses. Always making sure I'm moving forward.
I took a couple notes. We'll definitely come back to that.
Okay.
Do you have a bucket list item with a horse?
Oh, that's a good question. It's so funny. I don't know if there's an item per se, unless you could just going out on trails for rides, just going out and saying, hey, do you want to go? Yeah, let's go. And having that kind of a relationship. Maybe being in a place where we can share that presence with other people. But if it's just for me, it's having that friendship. Like, hey, hi, yeah, cool, awesome, let's go. Living in the place of no words, which that's the title of the upcoming like in-person events that we're scheduling. But that place of no words is what feels like home to me, because you don't need to have anybody else, like you don't need their head to understand it. We all feel it. That place where we understand, we get something and we're okay before we have to define it and prove it or teach it or repeat it or perform in any way. And that's again, it was the horses that taught me that, because that's how it felt when I was standing next to them. As a kid growing up, it was proven that if I started to talk about things to people, they weren't going to understand me. And so for a while, I just sort of stopped trying to be understood. But with the animals, there's this place of no words. And I use those words, ironically, to give people a sense of recognizing that part of themselves.
I'm going to give this a nom de plume for you. That I'm going to call Schrodinger's description.
That's awesome.
How about that?
That's an honor. I love that. Yes, I love that. Oh, it's really apt.
Place of no words as described by words.
Exactly. Yep, it's ironic. All right. Except no, actually, we'll call it quantum now.
Quantum. Okay.
Yes, it's not ironic anymore. It's quantum.
Do you have a bucket list item that has nothing to do with horses?
It's more like a series of items, and it's to just to tootle around the planet and visit beautiful places and eat croissants with amazing people.
That's pretty good. If that would fit on a bumper sticker, I think you could make that one popular.
Well, that's kind of my fallback, right? If everybody decides, nobody wants to work with Kerri or hear Kerri talking anymore, then I'm just going to put together a travel blog and travel the world, eat croissants, and make a coffee table book. I mean, it's a nice idea, right? That's a good fallback.
That's Saturday mornings in a capsule right there. Let me ask you this. Do you speak French?
No. I studied French for like 4 years. And at that time, I was thinking in French and I was dreaming in French, and I absolutely love it. If I were immersed in it again, I would be speaking French, no doubt. But right now, I mean, it's been so long. It's anytime I try to speak French, it sort of devolves into Spanish.
No, I used to speak Spanish pretty fluently, but now I haven't in quite a while. And yeah, I think I've lost a whole lot of it. The reason I ask, when you introduced me on Compass Conversations, you said Daniel Dauphin, which would be how you'd pronounce my name in French. But then you just said croissant, like a girl from San Francisco, instead of croissant. And so,
Croissant.
like, there's a dichotomy there. Is it going
Right.
to be French or is it not going to be French? Like, where are you at here, Kerri? Come on.
Oh my gosh,
Consistency.
you're rattling my perfectionism, Daniel.
Where is your favorite place to eat? Like, is there just this little sub shop or a salad or a tofu bar, or I don't know what would turn your float there, but where's your favorite place to eat?
Taqueria Santa Cruz Express.
Ah, yep.
San Luis Obispo. So currently, because it's easy. Two pollo asado tacos for $7.50 works for me, and they're so good, and they put so much cilantro on there. It's amazing.
I was having this conversation with my wife yesterday because we like Mexican food a lot too, and there's always that, is it authentic? And she just found a new little restaurant in a real small town south of us, and that was kind of the thing. It's a Mexican restaurant with actual Mexicans in there cooking. And then I was thinking, it stands to reason there's people in Mexico that are shitty cooks too, right? I mean, just having Mexicans in the back doesn't necessarily mean they're Mexicans that cook well, right? But anyway, same with Chinese food or French food or whatever. I mean, not everybody from place X cooks excellently. Like, some of them are going to suck. There's just no.
Have you been to Mexico? Have you spent time traveling and just going through towns and eating local?
Not really. I've been very close to the border. I've spent more time on the Texas side doing that sort of thing. I've been into Mexico, but not for extensive periods of time. But I do like finding those little authentic kind of places. We went to it was a cow show down to the border, and in not a real safe town. Like, there were warnings of potential kidnappings and that kind of stuff around there. But April and I went off one evening to a place that was just a mile north of the border, and we were the only gringos there. Like, everything was in Spanish, and it was an excellent meal. And then they had the mariachi band and the whole 9 yards. So
yeah, I was invited down to Querétaro a couple of times, which is about 2 hours drive north of Mexico City. And Julio, who hosted me, took me around to, the street food vendors, and it is just mesmerizing. The different ways you can have corn and gorditas, and it was so, I don't know the word. It was very softening to me because, living in California and Southern California, there's plenty of authentic Mexican preparation. But in the United States, I think people from Mexico they end up to some degree required to Americanize their food, and so going down, deep into Mexico and just being next to the ladies doing this cooking and, making the tortillas, just, it's exquisite. It's exquisite.
So do you cook any of that kind of stuff? Like, I can make a mean tamale. I have my own tortilla press. Like, I'm deep in there. So how about you?
Not like that. No, I really like to make black beans, and then I like making a bunch of things that I enjoy and throwing them in a bowl and stirring them together and eating them with tortillas. So like tortilla chips, right? So black beans and onions and quinoa, cilantro, obviously, some tomatoes and corn, maybe some garbanzo beans and some vegetables and stuff. And I mix it all together. Maybe have some green salsa on the side or hummus, and then just mix it all and dip and eat. Lots of textures. It's lots of colors. Really good.
Right there with you. Yep. You didn't mention avocado though. I gotta have
Oh,
a
yes.
bunch of avocado on there, but yeah.
Yes. No argument.
So that actually leads into our next question. Do you ever take little side trips when you travel? So like my wife she goes with me most of the time. She is really good about, I'm focusing on the event and she's on her phone finding the little local watering hole, and we go get not the Applebee's meal, but at the mom and pop whatever that nobody traveling to that town would ever know about, So we're
Yeah.
always looking for that kind of thing. So do you do that sort of stuff?
I do. I'm so blessed that when I do travel, I'm often hosted like a local. I'll stay with somebody at their house or in their, little uh, ADU out back or something. And people always have their favorite places. And it's the coolest thing, like, somebody comes to town, you want to take them to your favorite spots. And anytime I get the chance to do that, it's incredible. One of my favorite side trips was very different than that, though. I drove out from California to Colorado last year, the year before. And on the way back, I don't know if you know the meteor site that's in Arizona. There's like a huge like it's a 1.5 mile wide meteor crater. I was the most giddy little kid. That was my favorite side trip for the longest time. Literally, all you do is stand there behind a fence and look at a hole in the ground. But I'm like, this is so awesome. And it just, anyway, that's one of my favorite side trips I've taken.
Isn't it amazing too that they have the tourist building is right there beside it, and that the meteor landed and didn't hit that building? I mean, it's just uncanny coincidence.
What
Yeah.
are the chances? I had to sit down and think about that.
What does harmony mean to you, creator of generation of harmony?
That's an excellent question. Harmony to me is this smiling acknowledgement that everything is in motion. And then it is the excuse me, it is the nature of life to nourish and perpetuate itself, whether it looks like a plant or it looks like a fungus or it looks like a human or it looks like a horse or it looks like something like a single-celled organism or something we can't even conceive of yet, right? It is a force, a movement of energy that's designed to perpetuate itself. And so in that movement, there's going to be swirls and areas that slow down, areas that get interrupted, wobbled. But as a whole, everything we can conceive of remains in motion. And harmony is the movement of what we can conceive of, so that all of life can perpetuate itself with the greatest ease.
So, does disharmony exist?
Everywhere.
Okay, so here's my question. Like you're talking about these little whirls, slow parts, isn't that disharmony within harmony? But since harmony is everything and everything is always moving, evolving, it's a dynamic environment, isn't disharmony just a normal part of harmony?
I absolutely agree with that. Yes. The same way if you go to the river and there's a little outcropping of rocks, and that outcropping of rocks causes the water to swirl, right? And the leaf just swirls on top, the whole time and doesn't ever get past the rocks to go down the river. That is not different than the river. It is what the river's doing in that spot right now, right? So disharmony is like that little swirly vortex that is still part of the river, but it's just got these parameters around it that have an effect on the flow and the movement of the river itself. It's not separate from the river. It's just being shaped by something even slower, right? Like a different vibration that's even slower. The rocks, right? The rocks are also part of harmony, but they happen to look like rocks and act like rocks and affect the world and energy like rocks right now, because that apparently was part of the greater harmony of the moment. And so, in these ways, this is how we as humans can start to relate to and engage with and experience harmony. And depending who we are, the reason why we would do that, it just comes down to each of our own unique journey. What is it that I love to know? Why am I here? What do I want to create? And those thoughts are part of the general harmony. Putting those thoughts, yeah, go ahead.
So I have your thought to go to sleep on tonight. So in that description, 3 times you use the article the river, the being a singular article. But as a Buddhist, you would know that you can't stand in the same river twice. So there can't be the river, right? And so there's your thought to contemplate as you go to bed tonight.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that.
When was the last time that you spent a night camping under the stars or in nature? Not under a roof or a dwelling, just kind of out there.
That's a really good question. It's been a super long time since I've done that.
Really? I was expecting last Tuesday to be your answer or something like that. Okay.
No, truly out under the stars. No roof at all.
Well, even like a tent or a tarp or something would count. That would be
Oh,
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say no roof at all. That would be like 1990. But I'd have to say that was probably on Kauai, 2012. So yeah, it's been a while. I haven't gone camping in a long time.
Well, I got a homework assignment for you. You need to go sleep under the stars and contemplate harmony, disharmony, and how many times you can stand in a river.
Thank you so much. I love that.
How do you like your coffee or tea?
Oh, goodness. I like herbal tea and as is, like mix up of chamomile and lemon balm and dandelion root and good things like that. Coffee is a double shot of espresso with a splash of steamed oat milk. The fancy word is cortado, which is about that much in a glass, and it's very small and wonderful.
So you brought up oat milk. Here's another question for you. So soy milk in coffee, isn't that really just bean water in bean water?
Oh, yes. Yes, I think you're right. Wow. It is. With a kick, I guess. But I mean, if it tastes good, what the heck, right? That's the whole
thing. Yeah, I'm actually a licensed horticulturist. That's one of my little anomalies. And so coffee is actually the coffee cherry, and oat is often called an oat berry. So you could actually be drinking berry water in cherry water. How about that? That's just throwing it out there.
That would throw people. Next time you go for your croissant, you can order cherry water and people will look at you like their eyes have glazed over, and that'll be fun.
Mm-hmm. I mean, why not? There should be a national mess with the barista's mind day.
There you go.
Like that.
Give it a go. I love it.
Right lead or left lead?
Left lead. Yeah, and it's honestly because there's a massive curve in my spine, and
those are supposed to be there, by the way. Like
yes, not this one.
Not that way. The other way, the other diagonal.
No, this one. There was a little bit of like childhood scoliosis, in my spine, but when I was 14, I was thrown from a horse and basically landed on the left side of my face. It jarred my spine and it went untreated. I don't know if you can see this.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's not supposed to be there. She keeps her x-rays on her phone, so she was showing me. I'll try and cut that little part out as a clip so everybody will.
Yeah, I keep that on my phone because it helps to show chiropractors and doctors, who want to help, to say, and even like if I go for a massage, to say this is what's there, because it has to be addressed a little bit differently than your average everyday body. So that's why left lead, because that curve affects how the pelvis sits. And I've been working on it. I actually picked up a right lead not too long ago and was surprised. Like, I can ride a right lead. Whoa, this is incredible. Because just the way that pelvis has been twisted would get in the way of a horse moving on a right lead. And so the poor horse is like, I'm trying. And I'm like, I'm me too. So that hence my answer, left lead.
Well, I have a secondary question. It may not really be applicable in your case, but do you know if you are right-footed or left-footed? So if I threw a soccer ball in the grass and I said, kick that as hard as you can, which foot would you go kick it with?
With the right foot.
Okay. So that's my correlation I'm assuming we're going to make here eventually, is that right-footed people have an easier time going left lead.
I see.
But
so
I have had a couple people that were anomalies, so they were same size foot as so who knows, but just a couple. I think I've asked that maybe 10 or 12 people, and it's been 2 that it didn't correlate, and everybody else it did. So
awesome. I didn't realize that this was the scientific survey, so that's excellent.
Anecdotal anyway. Yeah, I don't. Okay. Science is too rigorous. Like I thought about that when I did my bit video, that I could have cited sources and all of that stuff, but honestly, I would rather fight a fucking bear than worry about whether I had the comma and the date. And like that's exactly where my academic rigor ends, is in the citing of sources and having to get all of that bullshit comma, period, date, and before the town, or if it's this one, you got like. No, I refuse. Absolutely not going to do it. So I even took, when I had to take technical writing in college, I know I was copping a little bit of an attitude for that. And the lady said, well, what if, you could be on an academic path here. Like, what are you going to do later on if you don't know how to do this? And I said, ma'am, if it ever matters in my life that I don't know how to do this, shit went bad wrong. Like, just no 2 ways about that. So that is not what is supposed to matter, in my opinion, but it does definitely matter to some.
Oh my God. Absolutely. It matters to some. So this actually is an interesting segue for a direction that has opened up in my world, which is about academia and intuition. This is part of what Intuitive Learning Foundation is all about. So this kind of starts back, with my relationship with academia as well, which was, basically I was a people pleaser in the world of academia. The job is to get good grades, and I can figure out how to do that and make everybody happy. But it was profoundly frustrating, because as much work as I did for academia, I always felt unseen, right? I would perform, I would do everything inside out and backwards. But the moment I wanted to ask a question from my genuine curiosity, there was no space for that. Like no, Kerri, you can't ask that question. Nobody cares about that. And I was passed up for an internship one time because I was told that, I wasn't perceived as being willing to do the hard work when the hard work was necessary, and things that it was just so confusing, academia was to me. But I ended up finishing the degree. So I have a degree in animal science and equine management and reproduction, and I'm grateful. super duper grateful. Because having an education for how to think scientifically is rad. I love it. It's so much flexibility. But then after that, I was like, peace out. I don't fit in academia, and went off and did lots of other things. Well, just a couple of years ago, I surprised myself and felt really compelled to apply for a Master's of Fine Arts in creative writing. Because during my academic career at UC Davis, studying animal science, my two favorite courses were creative writing and the literature of science fiction. Shout out to Ursula K. Le Guin, right? So whatever it was that inspired me to apply for an MFA, I did the work and put in the application and had the conversation and was offered a spot in the program. Like, surprised me, but not really, but it did. And a beautiful thing happened. I got to connect with the dean of the program a couple of times and have really heartfelt conversations, like, what is it you want to create? What brought you here? Who are you? And he really listened. In those conversations, he acknowledged, we would love to have you in the program. We would love to be sharing your perspectives and offering what we can and all of this stuff. And he said, please just check with yourself. Is academia where you want to be? It's okay if you don't want to do this program. And it blew my mind. It was like, wow, I met a human in the academic world. And it was really, really beautiful. I ended up declining and talking to him again and just thanking him so much for recognizing, the opportunity to have that conversation with me. And he was over the moon that I decided not to join the program. It was a 2-year program. He was really over the moon that I said no, thank you, because he told me there are lots of people who think that they need to be in a program like that. Circle back to perfection, right? And they say yes, and they get all the student loans and they go into the program and they just grind. And it just makes him sad when he sees people doing that. And, of course, the program is set up to help people who show up. So everybody gets as much help as they're happy to receive. But it was one of the coolest experiences for me, that he was just super chuffed that I recognized my answer was no, thank you. And I said, no, thank you. And he's like, anything, you call me. Like, if you want, me to go over something, like, he offered space in his world either way, which I thought was an incredibly generous outcome. And it healed something in me in the relationship with academia. So I know I'm kind of on a roll here, but last year, when the Intuitive Learning Foundation presented to create a nonprofit, like, for a number of years, I was asked, Kerri, you should create a nonprofit. Why haven't you done that? And I couldn't figure out what the heck would I create a nonprofit about, right? I don't know how to make a nonprofit out of a podcast, and my personal business runs as an LLC, and that's lovely. And
I would just like to say that I could help you with that a lot, because I've been podcasting for 4 or 5 years and I've made no profit at all from it.
So you've got it down.
It's actually quite easy to make no profits on the podcast. It's like super easy. I don't know how you had any trouble with that at all.
Yeah. Well, you can write the ebook. You can write the ebook on. So when I was asked again, why don't you turn Compass into a nonprofit? I said, well, okay, I'll contemplate that. And tried thinking like, what would the vision be, the vision statement and the mission statement. And I was talking to my friend Joelle. A lot of people in our community know Joelle Dunlap, who has the Square Peg Foundation. She's been running a nonprofit for 20 years and doing so in spectacular fashion. So I was talking to Joelle, and I said, yeah, I mean, this idea of nonprofit, and we've known each other for 15 years. She was like, immediately, yes, do it. Work on your mission and vision statement, run them past me. I will help you. I'll help you any way I can. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So she actually prompted me to just go back, like, what is Compass about at all? Where did that podcast come from? What was really at the heart of that idea? And I was reminded in that process of everything that I've done and created and written about. It's about helping people recognize where they are already connected, right? With their animals, with their loved ones, between their mind and their heart, with the divine, in however you'd like to talk about it. We are already connected. Otherwise, we wouldn't be animated. And we are already listening in subtle ways, whether or not, our perfection master thinks we're doing it well enough or not. The connection's already there. And so the Intuitive Learning Foundation, like, distilled from what I know, that the best way to expand our intuitive capacity is to notice where it's already happening, where it's already functioning. And then you get curious and you ask questions and you get clear, depending what your head needs in order to go forward. And so I thought, you know what? We can definitely make a nonprofit organization out of weaving intuitive awareness through our more familiar and conventional intellectual education, right? Not to take over and say, oh, here's the next type of schooling, screw old education, we should all go this way. It's actually the opposite of that. It's about like recognizing the brilliance of the kind of education and educational systems that are happening right now, and then showing up side by side with them and saying, okay, well, let's look at this as well, because we are living beings, and our livingness, the river, in other words, our beingness is already weaving into that. The more we acknowledge it, the easier the intellectual learning will become. It's just unfamiliar, right? People have been taught to be afraid of their intuition and push it away, or just poo-poo it, or hide it in the background in favor of being intellectually justifiable and all that stuff. Like, okay, that's great, but a lot of people being born now are crazy sensitive people. Autism has asked us to look at life in an entirely different way. And this is a lot of why so many of us are drawn to horses, because horses help us be okay with the part of ourselves that is not necessarily intellectually justifiable, but we can feel it. We can feel the connection. We can feel the heart. So there's already projects underway that is starting to weave these concepts into actual real academia, and a lot of other amazing things showing up that I never would have thought to ask for. So we're in a build it and they will come situation with that.
Okay, we'll come back to that as well, because that's a lot to unpack. Are your hands or legs better?
What? Better?
So, yeah, right. So like riding, or could be whatever, but yeah. So I'm going to just tell you, the question before this that got into all of what you were was right lead or left lead.
That's so funny.
We took a little journey down a winding river, and now we're back to.
I'm like, whoa! I need context on that. Holy smokes! Definitely hands.
All right.
If I get to ride more and I relax, then my legs are actually quite good. My seat is actually quite good, but my hands in riding are beautifully developed. Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking, and this doesn't have anything to do with you. This thought just popped into my head as you were answering that, but I haven't kept track of this. I'm going to start, but I'm wondering if there's going to be a divide there between Western and English riders, because English riders are so much more into contact,
Right.
and a Western rider may be having the goal of bridleless riding or something like that. Whether there's a dichotomy there or correlation, or
Yeah.
if that's just a weird thought that's never going to go anywhere.
Well, no, I think it's a great thought, and I think it's actually spot on. I mean, Western riders, if they're using bozals or curb bits, then no, you're not using contact. You're communicating in a totally different way, right? And um, that's really what it comes down to, is how clear you are in the communication that you're offering the horse, right? It's not about your hands or your legs. It's about clarity and staying simple with what it is you're offering the horse and asking of the horse.
Communication without words. Yeah.
The place of no words. What are you talking
Full,
about? That
full
sounds
circle.
really smart.
Besides a horse, what animal would you most like to ride?
Besides a horse, uh, given the opportunity to cultivate a relationship the same way I would with a horse, elephants all day.
Okay, I could see that. I
Yeah.
certainly could.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I remember there was a time where I took the kids to the circus and there weren't many people there. And I guess, I don't know if it's just an animal person thing, but I feel comfortable walking behind the scenes a little bit, and kind of, so I wound up back there with the elephants, holding like a 3-year-old in my left arm and talking with the elephant trainer and all that. And I was like, oh yeah, if I won the lottery, I'm buying a fucking elephant. Like, absolutely, I'm gonna have an elephant. And
Uh,
like, they just hobbled him back there. It was a makeshift deal, but it was basically a chunk of fire hose. And he
mhm.
had the elephant like back into a little corner of the barn, so that there were no fences or anything like that. He backed into the little, and he had the cuff chained to an iron beam or something, and he basically put a makeshift fire hose hobble on the hind leg. And I mean, all the talk of cruelty with elephants and all that stuff, I didn't see anything like that. Like, it was 2 elephants, and they were cool as could be, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Well, it's, until you really watch what it takes, depending how young the elephants were when they were indoctrinated to hobbles and things like that, and what people do to teach the elephants that they're powerless. There's there's a lot that could be talked about there. There's a lot that's not pretty. And, hopefully there are people who are able to work with the elephants in a way that honors them. But, it's imprisonment for ridiculously intelligent creatures who are meant to live in family systems, just like you and I and horses. So there's a whole lot of debate. There's a whole lot of ugliness that you could point out. And I'm happy that you and your little one had a neat experience meeting
Yeah.
elephants.
And it was a mother-daughter pair of elephants. So,
Ah, that's amazing.
yeah, I mean, I guess there are always situations where things could be done poorly or things could be done well. And I generally, unless there's something pointing me that way, I don't want to assume that it was done poorly rather than well. But I
Yeah,
don't, I guess.
I totally get that. And there's a whole other conversation about I mean, depending how spiritual you want to go, how big a perspective you want to look from, but animals living in and among humans are of service They are still bringing love right smack into the middle of humans. Whether they're treated poorly or treated well, they are an opportunity to help people open their hearts, right? To feel warmth. Like you and your little one look at the elephants and smile and feel like, wow, this is amazing. And that's in my awareness and everything, all of my communication. Animals in every situation are an opportunity for humanity to open our hearts. And it really comes down to our orientation. And do we want to get trapped up in all of the judgments, and looking for all the stuff that I could say is bad and wrong and should be different? Or can I acknowledge that, like you're doing right here, like that stuff, I'm sure that stuff exists. And if I get an opportunity to do something about it, I'm happy to act. But right now, my heart is opening, and that's the direction I'm going. That's uniquely human, to make those choices, to see options and put ourselves on a path of what we want to create more of. Right. And animals are so generous. They're so generous. They will, like horse racing. People ask me all the time, don't you hate horse racing? And it's not so much anymore. They used to ask me all the time, don't you hate horse racing? And honestly, I'm so happy that so many people get the opportunity to be around horses, to be inspired by the beauty and the majesty. And it's their opportunity to receive it. Horses are going to keep being horses. And hopefully more people soften in their hearts and take that opportunity to just be in love.
Well, I would. There's a bigger conversation here. I'm not sure I want to get into right now, but I would say part of that, I come at it from the other side of it too. So one of the things that I like to ask if I'm presented with a moral dilemma like here is what if the worst case scenario is true? What does that actually mean? And so where we're talking about animals in captivity, okay, well, what do animals in the wild do? For the most part, animals in the wild conserve energy, which means if they have enough resources around them, they chill and they don't go anywhere or do anything for as long as possible until they have to do something about resources again. So like one of the things that I'm into is falconry, and you never really domesticate a hawk or a falcon. Like you learn to work in a partnership, and some of them don't. Like sometimes this one just isn't going to work out. Sometimes it works out really quickly, but in the wild, if a hawk kills a big fat rabbit and he fills his crop up with that rabbit, he's going to go into a tall tree and sit there for 3 days until he's hungry again. So I could feed him every day and he's going to sit on this perch. And in reality, what's going on in his life is no different whether he's in captivity or he's in the wild. Either way, he's going to chill until he needs calories, and then and only then, motivated by that, will they move. So many animals we think of in this manner, the captivity thing isn't nearly as bad as we make it out to be. We're anthropomorphizing it, but if you really look at the facts of what that animal, wolves, whatever it may be, they don't travel 15 miles a night if there's an elk 100 feet outside of their den, right? They kill that elk, they eat, they go back to the den, and they go to sleep. So we tend to exaggerate things a little bit, and I think we often don't take, empathy is supposed to be about taking that other being's reality into your own mind. I think we fail at that spectacularly with animals most of the time. We anthropomorphize it. We think what we might want or whatever, but we're not actually looking at the animal and what that animal really would do if and
yeah.
So,
man, I love the points you're making. This is totally a segue that we could go into the animal communication and empathic sense and stuff like that if you want to.
But we're almost done with the icebreakers.
Oh, we're done. Okay. Yeah, icebreakers.
We'll do
All right,
that.
here we go. All right.
Do you agree that hot dog water is the opposite of holy water?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
It's a
Yuck.
great question. I know. Yep. What is it? Like, I love hot dogs, but like there is almost nothing nastier than hot dog water. I mean, they're just
I worked one game at Stanford Stadium, walking up and down, selling hot dogs during a football game. And oh, I could barf right now because we had to go back into the kitchen, pull the hot dogs out of the 200 hot dogs in that. It was like petroleum water. It was so horrific. It was not okay. So yeah, don't eat stadium hot dogs. Oh my God, the smell. Anyway, does that answer your question?
yes, I think so. Also, so technically defined, a hot dog is meat inside of a casing. And if you think about it, when you eat a hot dog, it actually still stays inside of a casing from your mouth till it exits. So when you eat a hot dog, you in fact become a hot dog. Just another thing you could think about when you're going to bed tonight.
You are a deep thinker, Daniel. That's some deep thinking.
Absolutely. Stuff the world never knew that it needed to know.
Yeah. Whew. Put it in
Would
your
you
ebook.
I need to do some ebooks. Yeah, absolutely. How to make a unprofitable nonprofit.
Yeah.
Is it more challenging to work with horses or people?
That's a really good question as well. I am being most. Are you asking about for me specifically or in
Yes.
general? Me
No, for you.
specifically?
Yeah.
There isn't one over the other. I can't draw a relationship in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about this?
Depends on so much.
Would you say like the ability to communicate with, understand where they are and what they need in order to progress? Is it easier to establish that with a person or a horse?
Oh, for me, it is really quite the same conversation. There's just different variables. Yeah. The biggest difference is with people, there's the added layer of illusion of
see, exactly, people lie. I mean, there's a whole other
I would say it's like self-deception, defense, fear, the thought patterns, and all of that stuff, right? But that doesn't make it harder to relate to, hear, and recognize what it takes to help them progress. It doesn't make it harder to notice those things. Where it gets to be different is whether or not the people are interested in going in the direction that their heart is taking them. Like, do they want to go direct, or do they want to take the scenic route? And a lot of people, myself included, will choose the scenic route until the scenic route is boring, repetitive, and potentially painful. And that's when people might downshift a little bit and say, okay, I don't care. I just want to evolve past this. Like, what does it take? And that's, when we see people make, quantum leaps, or really get dedicated to a learning program, really get dedicated to their own self-knowledge. And, lucky for us now, there's so many different ways, different programs, different followings, different approaches. But ultimately the fastest one, and this is so unique to everybody, is just awareness for its own sake, right? Let yourself be aware of things as they are without judgment, and you are on the fast track.
So let me ask you this. we're always having these really abstract conversations, but does a person need to be consciously aware of their patterns and all of those things in order for you to help them and affect those patterns? So for instance, like I'm thinking of a joke right now of a female comedian who's been in therapy for 2 or 3 years, and she's got 2 or 3 medications, and she one day decides to Google what those are, and she goes back to her therapist and says, are we thinking maybe I'm bipolar? And the therapist is like, yeah, you're totally bipolar. And she's like, well, why have I been doing this for 2 years and you've never said that word before? Like, you knew I was having this problem and you never told me what it was. And it's like, that's the thought I'm having there. Like, I don't need a horse to consciously acknowledge it's scared of XYZ to help it through that thing. If I'm working with a person, though, like that would be my go-to, maybe ineffectively so, to try to make them aware of what the problem is, and then we're kind of gonna more directly attack the problem. Where with a horse, I wouldn't have the inkling that I have to attack this head on directly. I would be perfectly comfortable with, doing it in a more circuitous route or something like that. So your thoughts on all that?
The thoughts, it goes back to working with horses, but different with humans. Same idea, though, is what can I bring to this person that stays below their brace, right? Mm-hmm. So if at the beginning of that 2 years, the therapist had said to the woman, oh, you're totally bipolar, let's just attack that, then that woman might have run out of the office. She might have disintegrated internally. The judge that says you are so not perfect, you should die, might have taken over, right? And so there's a nuance with people, which is a sense, a feel, an intuitive approach, or perhaps it's a linear analytic approach. I don't know. But for me, listening on all of those levels for where can I meet them where they are, but not trigger their brace, their self-judgment, their control, their power, the power over. And that's usually what I feel for, because I want to speak to people at the highest level that they're willing to engage, right? And try to find the language that inspires their curiosity, but it has to be brought in a way that's non-combative and non-defining. I don't want to be telling you who you are. I'm not interested in diagnoses, I'm interested in what it takes to help people see their wholeness. Where are you already whole? And what does that feel like? And once you feel that, what are you curious about? Because then the people will start to reveal the path that works best for them through their own curiosity, right? And then my job is just to facilitate curiosity and clarity. And that's a big difference between humans and horses, because horses don't have that ability to go into self-deception or to use self-deception or any kind of fabrication as a part of safety, as a part of defense, right? For horses, they're not constructing, sub-identities in their head as a form of fight, flight, or freeze, right? They're just fighting or fleeing or freezing. But humans can use our intellect and go internal and say, oh my God, I'm scared to death right now. So on some unconscious level, I'm going to disappear into my 9-year-old self who knew how to just be a good girl. And I'll let the 9-year-old run the show for a little bit, because at least we know we'll get through it without being attacked. If I go, if somebody's presenting with that kind of a defensive pattern and I can feel that they're suddenly very young, then the last thing I'm going to do is throw out, did you ever think you might be bipolar? Did you ever think you might need some drugs? No. What I'm going to do is relax into my heart and and open a space to let them be exactly as they are, and then see what I might be able to offer so that they get curious about what's next rather than trying to tell them what's next. So in a way, it's exactly the same as horses, right? Inspire their curiosity and then show them how to get it right and feel good about it. But humans have that added nuance of, the ability to create a world within a world within a world within a world through our egoic mental shenanigans. So, is it harder one or the other? I don't know. With humans, they have that self-deceptive capacity. With horses, they could kick you and hurt you, and that both of them can change the world. So one's not harder than the other. What matters is knowing myself in the conversation.
Okay. Well, that'll conclude our icebreaker questions. So let me tabulate your score.
Wait, can I ask you one more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it's all apparently I'm into colors, but why is an orange called an orange, but a banana is not called a yellow?
That's a very good question. I would say that probably has to do with languages. So the same language didn't necessarily name both fruits. I don't know where citruses originated, but bananas, I think, would be either Asian or South American. So, yeah, an orange isn't called an orange in Portuguese or French or whatever at all, right? So, how about that? Why did you know that the plural of octopus isn't octopi? It's actually octopuses, because it isn't a Latin root word. And we tend to think that it is because it sounds like it is, but it's actually not. So there would be my over rationalized. I know that's what you wanted, was an overly analytical, rationalized answer. So that's what I would say for you there.
I love it. I love staying stuck in my brain and analyzing things. It's awesome.
How about this? Did you know that lemons do not actually exist in nature? That is a man-made hybrid.
Yes, and I did know that.
That's right. Life never gave you lemons to make lemonade with or whatever. That's man-made shit right there.
Life never gave you lemons, period.
That's right.
Oh, that's so good. I love that.
Okay, so 4,811 points is what I've tabulated yet, which is, again, our highest score of all time. You have won the game, and that entitles you to either an awkward silence or a genuine compliment, your choice.
That's amazing. Wow. I am going to go for the genuine compliment again.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that while we definitely have different perspectives on things, I truly enjoy talking with you. Like, you are a person I could sit around a campfire with, and we just do this dance for, ever and ever and ever, and just keep wordplay and all of that stuff. And I really appreciate that about you. There's not a really long list of people I feel like I could do that with, but I definitely think you're one of the ones that I could, and I truly enjoy that part of you. I hope the conversation comes up and other people enjoy it, or some people are probably like, yeah, these two are just circling around. Not for everyone, perfectly fine, but I enjoy the dance anyway, Kerri. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so very much, Daniel. That's well received, and it's fun.
Okay, so let's jump right into the animal communicator side of things. And I don't think that's something you still necessarily bill yourself as, but when I say animal communicator, what does that mean to you there?
Well, there was a time, you're right. There was a time when I did bill myself as an animal communicator. It was not a long period of time. but I had the amazing fortune to study with the person who's kind of the grandmother of animal communicators as a profession. And so I learned from her. I learned the skills, and what I realized in that learning was, with or without that approach, this idea of communication was something that I'd been doing my whole life. And I just had never thought to use it in the ways that I learned from her. So to me, animal communication, that term, is a term that now describes a certain way of connecting with animals, that would ask them questions, that lets humans relate to non-humans in a way that maybe we didn't think was possible before, right? Gives us a way to think about it.
You talk about it being a skill that can be, so this isn't like a psychic gift kind of a thing. This is an actual development of skills. So what do those skills look like? What are we talking about here?
The skill looks like discovering more clarity about how your own intuition provides you information. What does it feel like when you are actually receiving, or maybe in the presence of, telepathic information, empathic information, or other subtle energy reality that we may or may not have words for? Knowing, right? Presence, movement, harmony, beingness. All of those are words humans have, right? We're the only ones with words, in the way we use words anyway. So the skill begins with having your own mind recognize and value all of the subtle reality of our own world. Like, for example, we'll just make it easy, start at an easy place, talking about empathy, our empathic sense. Every single human is born with an empathic sense. It's our first way of communicating with our caregivers, right? Infants, if they're hungry, their body just starts to emanate hungry, a need for food, right? That reality moves into our biosphere, which is a sphere of energy around us that just is full of information.
So would you say that this is something of degrees, though? Because like there would be new parents who are looking at that baby going, I don't know what he wants. Like he's crying, and so
that's exactly right. But if those parents had developed an awareness, right? The skill is to develop the awareness of recognizing this feeling, I'm going to relate to hungry. This feeling, I'm going to relate to sadness. This feeling, I'm going to relate to confusion. How we use our words on top of what our senses are giving us all the time.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this, and it is obvious we come at things from a different way. Like I'm a part of your year-long course that's going on right now, and you had made a comment one time that it struck me within the course, and I made a comment about it. If I physically feel emotional feelings, I'm generally not aware of it. Like I could think of like sadness if I'm at someone I love's funeral, like the tightening of the throat and that kind of thing. I like, okay, now I've got a physical connection to that. But for instance, happiness or most emotional feelings, I don't have a physical association with fear, we might say, of, adrenaline dump and your heart starts pounding like a 9-pound hammer. Okay, I'll say that one, but for most emotions, I don't know that I'm not aware of it or whatever, because I think I'm pretty aware of my body proprioception wise and athleticism and whether my weight's here or there, or so.
Yeah.
So here would be my question. Like, another thing is my wife and I were talking about this not long ago, and like, she has a narrator in her head. She hears voices. If she's replaying a conversation we had, she has my voice in her head saying what I said. I don't experience the world that way at all. Like, not even like when I learned that about her, I'm looking at her like you could be an elephant right now. I'm not sure we're the same species. This is not my experience. So how would you square that? Some people are just more attuned this way, or is it some people are an A and some people are a B and some people are an F, and we just experience the world in different ways, and this is your experience. But I could try to do that, be trained, whatever, but it's just not ever good. Like, I could try to be 7 feet tall, not happening, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
So what?
Everything you're saying, yes to everything you're saying. Here's the words I would use. Everybody is unique. I look at it like, right now you're just sort of drawing it out like you're an A and she's a B and I'm a C and somebody else is a Q and all of that. To me, that works. But I would say each of us is like our own musical note, right? We're each this unique expression. And we're each built the way we're built for reasons in this life and beyond, right? There's so much to our existence from before we picked up this body and after we lose this body, right? A lot of people are really up in arms and worried, like, what happens after we die? But how come nobody's asking where were we before we were born, right? There's a continuity in there. And through that continuity, we are each unique. We're born into circumstances that are the perfect prompt, really, to ultimately at some point get our own attention. So we wake up and remember more of who we are, meaning that pure-hearted self that isn't worried about being perfect, that knows that each of us is valuable, that knows that we're connected to all of life. That's resident within all of us, but we each have our own unique package for what might be in the way of that knowing, and what kind of a puzzle we're working to bring ourselves to a greater sense of wholeness. So your mind works the way that it does. April's mind works the way that it does. But that doesn't negate the fact that each of us has our physical body, but we also have an energetic body. Depending what system that you study, there are more than one energetic bodies. But just to keep it really simple, if we acknowledge that who I am does not end at the outside of my skin, right? Who I am actually emanates beyond my skin, right? And I know that because people can feel me walk in the room. And I can feel other people walk in the room. That right there is like a multidimensional anatomy. And when we're talking about animal communication, we're functioning from that kind of anatomy, not only an anatomy of a physical body that beats its heart faster in certain situations and not others, right? That's a less subtle communication than maybe having your dog walk in the room and look at you and you just know, oh yeah, of course you're hungry. There's no big demonstration, right? There's just They look at you, and all of a sudden the thought moves through, oh, you need to go out. Okay. That's an example of communicating through a different level of subtlety in my multidimensional body.
So maybe it's more the analytical side of me, which is the only way I can come at any of this. But to me, like learning that the baby was hungry, I would attribute that more to body language stuff, or it has this particular cry, or I know it hasn't eaten in 6 hours, so the most likely reason why it's crying, and I just changed the diaper, so probably hunger is what's going on here. Or the dog goes to the door, looks at the door, looks at me, looks at the door, looks at me, whines a little bit. And so I'm not looking at that from a harmonics, vibration, energy thing. It is more a logical conclusion of, or a reading of body language, that I know this sign means this and that sign means that, or time, logic, the other things that are coming into play there. So I guess that's where, when I'm thinking animal communicator, and maybe this is totally off because I've never have dipped my toe in these waters. I've heard of people who you could call them on the phone, and this is a person you've never met, who's never been on your place, never seen your animals, and ask them what's going on with my horse, and from 3 time zones away, they have something to say. So is that off base? Is that correct, or not the situation, or what?
That's been my situation. That's been what's been natural to me my whole life. And I never had a way to explain it, right? It is a reality for a lot of people that we call connection. You can call it psychic connection. You can call it subtle energy bodies, whatever the words are. But there are people who are born with that natural orientation to life, right? Your natural orientation is linear intellectual, and that's the puzzle you're working right now. It doesn't mean you don't have access to all this other subtle stuff. Maybe you just have not had the experience, not had the interest, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? Just the same as there are people who would go into a forest and have communication and know what this plant will serve in my body, what that plant will serve in my body, but they never once analyzed it. They never once compared and did scientific, back and forth to sit and study. Well, when the wind blows, then the leaf does this, and that tells me it's this kind of plant. They go in and they listen to the plants. Or native people, maybe in the deserts in Africa or Australia, who still find it curious that we can't hear the stars, right? That the people with white skin are not hearing the stars. It's obvious the stars are right there and they're talking. So there are these different unique availabilities to the full package that is human, of which we are just scratching the surface. But practices and areas of study or development, like animal communication, like there are schools now who are teaching children their capacity to blindfold their eyes and yet be able to see what color is being held in front of them, or to actually read cards. An example, there's a 48-minute film done by Wes Anderson, who I love, called The Interesting Life of Henry Sugar, I think, or The Interesting Story of Henry Sugar, something like that. Totally worth watching. But it talks about developing one of these skills of using our less familiar, subtle bodies as our sensory system to relate to the world in ways that are not necessarily being taught in public school, which is actually what we're trying to work on.
Okay. All right, so I have to have my skeptic hat here, and I'm
Yep.
going to try not to offend you with this, but I would also say that within that world there are some very noticeable or noteworthy charlatans
Of
who were
course.
just more con men type of thing, and so that kind of leads to the skepticism of I can't see it, taste it, touch it, analyze it, and thus it's easy to say that it doesn't exist. Now, I'm going to full disclosure on this, like I've had occurrences of deja vu. There have definitely been, this person has popped into my head 8 times in the last 3 days, and I call them and they were thinking about me too. Like there are things that happen that I can't explain that seem to be connected in some way. And so I have a recognition of that, but I also feel like I understand 0.0000001% of what the hell might be going on there. So I can't analyze it, I can't control it, I can't understand it, and thus it seems like skepticism is the proper perspective to to
Yeah,
take
yeah.
that with,
Yes, of course. It makes perfect sense, right? And you said the big C word, control, right?
Mhm.
And that's what it comes down to, and that's okay. It comes down to a person's willingness to participate with what they don't understand. And even if you're not participating, can you be curious? Right? Because there's like the vast majority of life that's happening, we will never understand. So, how
Yeah.
important is it to you that how you will walk in the world? And if I want to understand and keep control, why? What motivates my control? Is it fear? Is it wisdom? Right? Because you can stay in control of something out of a very, very deep, heartfelt wisdom because you're not willing to repeat a pattern, for example, right? Like an emotional pattern, or you're not very, very dedicated to not repeating a detrimental relationship situation. And so you might actually control your actions, you might control your conversation just to stay on top of, not falling into an old pattern of, oh, yes, this would be great. I'll see you on Tuesday, blah, 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 blah. Right? That's control that's coming from a place of wisdom and awareness. What matters is not necessarily like it's good to be analytical and skeptical, or it's bad to be analytical and skeptical. To me, what's valuable is understanding if I'm going to stay analytical and skeptical and controlling, why? Where is it coming from? And how is it serving me? Is it serving me? Right? Ultimately, yeah, go ahead.
So if we just took the word animal communicator on its face,
Yeah.
like I feel like I don't feel like I know with absolute confidence and certainty that I could walk into a round pen with a horse that someone's owned for 5 years, and probably within 2 minutes, I know more about that horse than that person does.
Right.
But I attribute that to experience, to reading the body language of the animal better than they do because of my experience. Like I have a basis for where that stuff comes from, and I also feel like it if we wanted to be analytical about it through that animal's actions and judging it over time, I would be borne out to be correct a very, very, very high percentage of the time. Not to say that I'm not ever wrong, or sometimes here's another data point I didn't have, and oh, now it's not what I thought it was. I now recognize it's this, but I'm gonna be pretty damn right most of the time, pretty quickly with it. So I get that. I guess the whole you're in a different state with an animal you never met, like that's the part of it that seems a little stretchier to me, of the over the phone stuff and whatnot. But I mean, hey, I'm not saying that I confidently know it doesn't exist. I guess I'm just saying I'm skeptical because there's no part of that that I can analyze or that makes sense, or a thread of whatever going through it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's kind of the design. If you were ever willing to be available to your own experience of it, and you would feel what that kind of connection is like, then you might be curious in a different way. Your analysis might shift because you've had your own experience. And until there's a space and a willingness to have that experience, then it totally makes sense that you're going to stay in that analytical realm, until you have something a little bit more familiar, right? So, I just encourage you to stay curious. And if and when there's ever enough curiosity to, like, this is how I love to walk people into it, is invite all the control to come sit down next to us, right? Invite all the defenses, all the skepticism there. It's welcome. Bring it all right here. And then let's walk forward anyway. And if all the defenses need to fight with me and pull out a bazooka and make sure I know exactly how wrong and weird I am, great. Like, please tell me something I don't know, right? Yeah, but it really is, each of us is on our own journey, working our own puzzle. And if we can listen to each other, and especially when we feel skeptical, get curious, like, okay, this thing exists for a reason. People talk about it for a reason. People, like, there is something here. Am I genuinely curious to know more or not? Am I curious enough to find enough to be right that I'm smart to be skeptical? Or am I actually genuinely curious how this weird thing is a part of human existence and what it serves in the world? There's not a correct answer to any of that. It's unique for each of us. But, the words animal communication point at a certain way of developing skill with subtle energy that animals are very happy, and it's proven out over and over and over again, when people show up available in that way. The animals are so generous with sharing their world. The part where, is the animal communicator genuine, or are they a charlatan, or are they good at what they do? Are they accurate? It all comes down to the clarity of the human doing the listening and the translating, right? The same way you could hire somebody to be a French translator, and you might be listening to them going, oh, wow, that's great. But 3 other French translators might say, no, they were wrong, right? So, take out French translator and put in animal communicator. It comes down to a personal journey of being clear within myself, knowing where I'm coming from. Am I doing this because I need to make a living, or am I doing this to be of service? Am I doing this to prove to myself in the world that I matter? Or am I doing this because I can't run away from it anymore? It's part of who I am, and this is a way to express who I am, right? It's that level of self-awareness that changes how we go into our learning, how we develop clarity and integrity in what we share, especially when it comes to translating in subtle realms.
So within that, is there an affinity for different species? Like, I'm real good with cats, dogs, and horses, but don't ask me about birds or turtles or...
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There can be. Yeah. Again, it's totally unique to the person, because yes, sometimes a person is much more available to domesticated species. Other times they are much more available to wild species. There are people who are particularly good at helping find lost pets. And there are people who are particularly good at communicating and translating like a medium when animals have left their body, they've died, but the person is still really curious. There's something unresolved. There are people who are masterful in that realm. And then, like myself, my own progression, all of it to me is... It ends up being organized by the person standing in front of me, what their heart is curious about, what their wholeness is asking for, and what kind of questions they have. What is it what is the healing that they're looking for? What is the part of themselves they want to recover? And then sometimes that is a direct communication with an animal, as if, and not as if, but it's the animal's consciousness communicating to me. I get to receive it, turn it into English, and offer it to this other person. To me, it's very much about how can I be of the integrity and honor both the person and the animal, so that everybody can move forward, whatever that's going to look like.
So what within that was your specialty? And I guess secondarily, we're using past tense words. So what drove you beyond that? Like, I assume that's not really something you do much anymore. So if it was what was the catalyst that pulled you a different direction or whatever?
It's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking me that question.
It was a cat, wasn't it? Be honest. You had dealings with a cat, and we all know cats are assholes, and you were just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done.
That's funny. I know cats push you over the edge. So as a specialty, I don't know that I can say it definitely wasn't a species. It was more like a situation of deep healing, where I'm thinking about one horse, Maggie, who had huge scars on her forehead. And her person really wanted to know, like, is she okay with this? Does she, is she okay in general? Is there anything we can do to help her heal whatever that old wound was? And so I have a great ability to create this space and ask really good questions in the place of no words, and invite beings from that injured part of themselves to come forward and go, oh, it's not happening anymore. And then I can go, yeah, it's not happening anymore. And actually your person would really love to offer you, something different that you hadn't experienced. And then I can take the human words into the place of no words and translate it into the subtle communication that requires no words, that creates a reality different than the one we were used to. Animals are amazing at letting go. Like, oh, it's not happening anymore? Oh, okay. And then you can actually watch their physical body change in front of your eyes because their energy changes and their subtle bodies change. And, there's lots of healing modalities that address that as well, craniosacral and Reiki and quantum healing and healing touch and things like that. But it's also available in the listening in quantum spaces when a person knows how to access and navigate that within themselves. So that was sort of what I was really, the animals and people drawn to me would show up with those kinds of questions and that kind of depth. And here's the thing. What drew me, what invited my evolution beyond that, which I still do that work. And when people show up asking for that, it's an honor. It's the greatest honor to do this work. But what drew me past that was this recognition that what I was drawing to me were situations to get my own attention so that I could do that same work within myself and call forward those same parts of myself that were still stuck in an injury and integrate so that there's no aspect of my psyche, my intellect, my energetic self, my emotional self, all of the subtle bodies, none of that is left stuck in that little eddy in the river going in circles. We take away all the rocks and the water can flow. The more I genuinely let go of who I thought I was, because for the longest time, I'm Kerri. I'll be at the barn. I work with horses, not people. See ya, right? That was an identity because of all of the internal fears. The more healing I did, it resolves the identity. I don't need to cling to that version of myself, that familiarity anymore. And when there's no longer a need to cling, the river is going to take you on your evolution. And that's the genuine truth. My greatest commitment is to become what this highest consciousness that can move through a person, to become whatever I am to become in this lifetime on that plan, to stop clinging to who I think I am, to stop clinging to what I think I need to prove, and be good at. But to get more and more, and this is where it gets into all the spiritual stuff, but to get more and more, to have my reality more and more aligned with the fact that this life doesn't end when the body dies. Like, all right, then if that's true, I'll have that now. And that who I am is healthy, whole, and complete. Okay, if that's true, I'll have that now. What does it look like given the circumstances, right? And if I'm thinking this way and not everybody is thinking this way, how can I be of service? Because thinking this way feels like exquisite universal freedom. So how can I help others? Because I bet other people have that inside themselves, but might not have as the same ease with the unknown that I do, which I'm like in infancy as far as I assess it, So anyway, I'll just pause there.
So how do you, well, let me say this first. I have often kind of found with horses and whatever their past or traumatic, because I work with a lot of problem horses and all. I really don't care what happened for the most part. The way I look at it is that's not something I can affect. And I'll see people that like their entire present is kind of clouded by the past, and they never really give that horse a chance to step it. Like they're just a constant reminder of this thing, and almost like a handicap person or something like that. Like I tend to make fun of those people, and like with you and the show sponsor, I'm gonna, to me, that's the way that I'm gonna say it's okay. You are what you are. I acknowledge what you are, and we're gonna have a little fun with it. You're welcome to do the same to me. If we pretend like there's a hands-off zone, now we've got an 800-pound gorilla in the room, and we're all gonna feel that gorilla, and now that's a scenario of it's not okay. We have a thing, and so I think you gotta slap the thing in the face and deal with it, and that's my take anyway.
Yeah.
So how do you go about creating space where it's okay? We're gonna just deal with it, let it go, move on, whatever.
Yeah. It's so similar. I'm probably going to make your skin crawl right now. But that compassion, I would call it compassion. When you make fun of something for the opportunity to create space where it's okay to be whatever you are, I'm going to call that the Daniel approach to compassion. Yeah. That creates space where everybody can be just as they are. And in that space where you're allowed to be where you are, there's no enemy, right? It's like saying, yeah, I can see that life is hard for you, but that's all right. Come on with me. Let's see what we can do. How can I help? That's compassion, which is very different than empathy, and it is different than sympathy. Right? Empathy, like you were saying before, is I feel what you're feeling. That's it. And it gets very overcomplicated To people will say, I empathize. And there's so much mixed into that, depending on how your tone of voice and what you're intending, right? Because some people will say, I really empathize with what you're going through. Does that mean you're compassionate? Does that mean you're judging? You're not judging? What is it you feel? What do you think I'm feeling? And it can get really, really muddy. Empathy, if we keep it really simple, can just be, yeah, I can feel what you're feeling. And, I or you might step into a round pen with a horse and recognize immediately, that they're scared and they're defended and have all this list of stuff. That's an example of our empathic sense, as well as our, experience and history and study. All of it works together. That's the whole idea. It's not meant to isolate. It's either intellect or it's intuition. It's all happening all the time. So you ask, how do I create that space where it's okay for everybody to be as they are, right? Which actually lets everything heal from the depths, right? Is very similar to you. I walk in and do my best to just notice, okay, here's what I can feel going on. Here's the subtle energy. Here's what my brain sees. Here's what I can calculate. That's what I'm hearing from the person. It's awareness without analysis. And when I let myself be aware before words, before definitions, concepts, or analysis, that's what creates the space. There's another word for it, and the word is presence. When I just share my presence and I don't require anything to be different than it is, but I'm here, I'm aware, I'm listening, I'm paying attention. And here's the real key to all of this. My orientation is to let my heart be open for the highest and best good of all concerned in the situation. How can I assist? Which is a different orientation than, oh my God, am I going to sell this person on my package, or are they going to buy? They didn't buy. Right? Like, okay, I'll give you my presence until it's clear you're not going to buy from me, and then click.
That's what I do. Yeah, totally.
Well, does that make sense to you, though? I mean, do you get the picture that I'm drawing with all of that?
Somewhat, yeah. I don't, as much as I can. I mean, I have a couple other questions. So, okay. With various horses, like you talked about people talking and without words and all of this. On the people side of things, I always read people who talk to horses constantly. That is a self-soothing mechanism of that person. So when I see that, I know that we're probably dealing with a person that's a little insecure, a little fearful, or something like that of this horse, and so that's how I tend to approach them. I don't necessarily see that as a problem. I kind of view things more like data points or a point on a map that just says you are here. There are other people, I use this tool all the time, who are fearful of the horse, but they're like not acknowledging it or letting it out. And if you get them to talking, that is how they kind of can release it. And so it's not like talking is a problem. Sometimes it's the solution. It's just more the data point. So my question for you, I always use the funny thing about people talking to horses, that the native tongue of the horse is Portuguese. So unless you know how to speak Portuguese and talk to them, they're not going to understand any of that. So all that talking is for you, not for them. Do you find that any animals have accents? Like, are French horses different from American horses, or are they all,
Yeah, that's another great question. Yeah, horses who have been raised in Germany and then shipped to the United States will feel different. Like the way you organize before words, the way I organize how I can convey to them my intent or my curiosity. Sometimes it has to be built a little bit differently. And I'm not saying it's a direct parallel, but I would make it akin to, like, in the English language, you do, subject, adjective, verb. But in maybe Spanish or French, you would do adjective, subject, verb. And in that way, it shapes how you form your thoughts and your intentions, right? And there's also, maybe you know about this, it's called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, that says that the language you speak shapes the way you think. You would enjoy that.
Okay.
I
can see that.
Yeah, the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So, if you're speaking French, it's going to have you think in French. I know that. I experienced that, right? And English, same. When horses have been brought up by people who are thinking in certain patterns, they start to learn to relate to people in certain patterns. And sometimes it's hard for them to relate to people in patterns other than what they were brought up with. So if you go to communicate with them, it's not like they speak German. It's not a one-to-one correlation. But the way that they relate to people might feel different than what would be automatic from my language and culture. Okay, so on that same line, animals have not grown up thinking in the ways human language cause us to think, which is why the place of no words is a really wonderful thing to have a relationship with. And this is a lot of what can affect animal communicators if they're not so aware of how their own psyche was built. Sometimes the psyche gets in the way, and that's when it looks like hardcore anthropomorphizing. So all these healing modalities and every way that we assist each other and educate each other, it all is going to, now or in the future, come down to self-awareness. How aware am I of how I walk in the world so that I'm available to meet you where you're at? That's what creates the space, is me knowing, where I actually have space for something other than me, something different than me. And then all I do is acknowledge myself and create that space. And there you are. So I can acknowledge what else is also here.
Mm-hmm. I would say, to me, a little bit of what I hear there, like part of the trouble that the amateur rider has when they're trying to train their own horse, work with their own horse, is they're not necessarily there for the horse. They're kind of there for them.
Yep.
And when I step into the round pen, this isn't learning time for Daniel. I am actually here for this horse. And so the perspective there is more different than you would tend to think. I would also say that I have a harder time training my own horses because there is kind of that emotional connection in there that muddies the waters a little bit. And so
yes.
Where I'm not emotionally tied to your horse at all. And I think I can do better that way because I'm not emotionally tied to it. I've always thought like that we got this whole thing in the horse world now of the connection thing and all of this stuff. To me, that is so in most people's way. It so complicates the picture, and I don't think you're at your best when you're in that super emotional side of things, or
Yeah.
it's a yin and yang thing. Like there's a good aspect to that, but there's a bad aspect to that too. That's where all of the justifications of people who do bad things and regret them later, that's the same state of mind they're in. It's just the dark side of it rather than the light side of it,
Yes. Well, so this is where I think the clarity and the tools that I share kind of stray from even the fringe people, but we actually don't require emotional connections to have deep connection with another being. Emotions are a finite layer of energy that we experience and the animals experience. Oh, yes, absolutely. But it's actually not a definition of who we are. It's more of a reflection of how we've processed our experiences. So, talking about, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Good and bad are polarizations, and they're polarizations that you and I can apply to anything, right? I ripped off the Band-Aid. Oh, it hurt. That's bad. I ripped off the Band-Aid. Oh, it's good because now I'm free of it. How do I process the situation? What have I decided about it? That is what breeds emotions. And for humans, it's so woven. For everybody, it takes a little bit different dance to come to a perspective where what would it be like to just recognize emotions but not be affected by them, not be adhered to them, not relate to the world with emotions, but instead relate to the world with a pure heart-centered connection. It's super unfamiliar for people. And but what you're talking about, easier to work with somebody else's horses rather than your own. Animal communicators, many animal communicators go to other animal communicators for exactly that reason, right? Because it's easier to go to somebody who is not affected by those emotional. TV fuzz is really kind of what it's like, it's a very real thing, but emotions are not who we are. Now, there's so much in this conversation about how we use language, right? Because some people will say the words emotions and feelings and use them interchangeably, right? Mm-hmm. That emotions and feelings are the same thing. Well, then why do we have two different words? They're very different things. And to slow down enough and have clarity of, when I use the word feeling, what am I talking about? It's about the body registering the movement of energy on some level. That's a feeling. It could be blunt, it could be incredibly subtle, but that's what feeling is. Emotion is actually that energy that is moving. It's not the registering of it, of what's happening. It is the energy moving itself. So, radio analogy, right? In a radio analogy, the radio signal flying through the air to the little box, that's emotion. Feeling is the radio translating that energy into a different form that's recognizable.
So you would say with me not having a recognition of a physical feeling of happiness or something like that, that I have an emotional, I have emotions, but I have more trouble with feelings because it's the receiving of it and the translating into
Yep.
this or whatever.
Yep.
Well, I like it that way, Kerri. Let me tell you, I'm staying my little statue over here, and I'm just fine and happy behind this wall.
That's awesome. You keep going. You do it.
One thing I would like to talk about with you a little bit, and we have talked a lot about words and semantics. I find myself a little bit torn sometimes. I think there's a role playing aspect to things. You'd act differently depending on what role in a situation you may find yourself in, and I find myself a lot of these days in kind of a devil's advocate, more protection of the old, because I think we are at a point where there's so much progress going on where we are very much in danger of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, kind of a thing. And part of that for me is the weight of words. And so allegations of abuse and trauma and things like that go through the world right now, I find there's a ton of hyperbole, and we are losing the weight of certain words because those words are so loosely thrown out in every situation. Now I'll give an example. Like there's another horse trainer that's kind of here in my area, and I haven't worked with him a ton, but I've been around him enough. Like every horse he has any trouble with comes with the excuse of it was abused, it was traumatized, and I'm just like, that's bullshit. That horse is fine. There's nothing real serious going on here. You haven't cracked that puzzle, but that doesn't mean that horrific things are the reason you haven't cracked that puzzle. You're just too green to have cracked that puzzle yet. It'll be okay, and in 20 years or whatever, you'll understand. And I find that kind of stuff a lot. Like we've got the rescue situation in the world, and every one of those horses comes with what I would say a lot of times is a made up history intended to pull at your heartstrings and make you feel feelings rather. Let me say that. Feelings, not emotions. You're gonna
Well,
and
you're right. It's emotions, but then you're going to feel your emotions. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so it's more of a either a conscious or an unconscious manipulation. And I feel like that is like I'm a realist. I want to deal with reality. I'm very aware of when people are trying to manipulate me and things like that. And so um that's the part of it that concerns me, is that we're taking words that should have a lot of weight and a lot of meaning, and almost we started this talking about problems and boredom. I think we've solved so many problems that we're now down to a set of problems that are fairly small, and because they're the only problems we have, they look big, because by comparison we don't have big problems. Kind of like we were talking about, a mutual friend of ours had her truck catch on fire as she's driving this morning, right? And so whatever problems we might have felt like we were having early this morning now seem pretty small compared to she almost died on the side of an interstate hundreds of miles from her home. Um so anyway, I guess that's what are your thoughts on words? Do you see the hyperbolization there, or am I taking that too seriously and need to chill out, or what?
Well, my question is going to be if people are overusing concepts like this, why? Where's it coming from?
I think it's from that need of having to have a problem so that they have a scenario they can step into and kind of be the hero or the savior, or it justifies
Yep.
something, and it has to be grandiose enough or something in order for that justification to occur. And I'll also say, we're going to get here into defriend the horse in a minute. Like trauma isn't mathematical, so X doesn't equal Y. You can have the same situation happen to 10 people, and 3 of them may come out of that absolutely unscathed. 3 or 4 of them may be not too bad off, and 3 of them may be destroyed, and it's going to be a life-changing event. So it's not like if this happens to you, we have a necessarily predictable outcome. It will affect different people or different horses, different dogs, whatever, differently. I like the scenario of you could take a a wine bottle and drop it on the ground, and it could shatter into a million pieces. It could also break where it now has a short point and it's a weapon. So the whatever that exterior force is going to affect different people differently.
Yeah.
So for that reason, like for the 3 people whose lives were changed by whatever event, they're traumatized. For the 3 people on the other side of that spectrum who it didn't affect them at all, they're not. And I think it trivializes the ones with a problem to paint all of them with the same brush. It makes the word meaningless. Like the word abuse in the horse world now. I mean, it's getting thrown around so much, and we're at a point where if everything's abuse, nothing's abuse.
Well,
Now
I
it's
get
meaningless.
that. I get that. And I get that draw to make it one or the other. Either it's this or it's that. Like, and everybody just get clear on which one it is. But the truth is life is not that hard line dualistic, no matter how hard humans try to push it into this or that, yes or no, should or shouldn't. Come on, people, right? What it always comes back to me to why are people doing what they're doing? So I agree with you entirely that people find problems for the opportunity to solve them because they get to feel good, justified, smart, well, right? Because it satisfies a feeling they're looking for. It satisfies something that helps them maintain who they think they are and how they feel about themselves. So here's where the compassion comes in. What if I just let them? I let that person do what they need to do to create whatever feeling they think they need to feel. And that's what they're up to. And now I'm watching from a place of compassion rather than doing the same exact thing that they're doing, which is applying an opinion so that I can feel good about my opinion that I'm solving a problem and I'm good and right about it. And I'm talking about myself here. I've been through this a million times. So, and I look at it in myself all the time because I don't want to be judging other people's judgments, right? And so what I have come to not only surrender to, but actually embrace is that people are going to look and perhaps create problems that may or may not have been there for the opportunity to solve them. Because, well, lots of reasons why that I can list in 1 second. But what happens when I actually just accept that and meet them there without getting in a fight about it? That goes back to what we were talking about of creating some space.
So, yeah, I would. So my way of looking at this, I wouldn't say that it needs to be combative or anything like that, but I'm looking at it more from a responsible stewardship scenario. Like for instance, if someone comes to a clinic and they are really scared of their horse,
Yep.
but I can see that the worst case scenario of what this horse might do is a 2 out of 10. Like, you're not actually in any danger. This horse doesn't, like, you're in way more danger. He's gonna trip and accidentally fall on you than whatever's going through your head. And so I feel like it's like my duty to point out your compass isn't pointing north here. Your compass is pointing west and you think it's north. Let me help you recalibrate that into reality, because you have skewed this into something that isn't actually happening right now. And if we're also talking about like our ability to affect horses, it stands to reason, if I'm going to be logical about this, that the person handling a horse with a faux trauma is actually now traumatizing the horse.
Yeah.
And so again, do I have a stewardship, a responsibility to step in there and be like, look, that horse had a bad day, but that's not abuse. Like abuse is way worse than that. Like, I have worked with horses that have been truly abused, and like, it's a whole different kettle of fish than what you have in front of you here. Like, this is minor. You don't need to be, you know, we're not amputating the arm here. Well, this just needs a Band-Aid, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, that's, by and large, that's why people come to clinics, to be told things that they can't see and find for themselves. Right. And in that kind of a situation, the clinician, the real gold that I think the clinician can offer is to see these things really, really clearly in the students, right? And then get clear within themselves, what is it that I have to contribute to this? It's not about, like, so for you, you see, like, okay, the actual problem is a 2 out of 10. So how do we recalibrate your perception? The more you go into that approach with a kind heart, a compassionate heart, creating space, you give that person not only the chance to recalibrate what they're seeing, but you give them a chance to relax into their being, to relax out of the fear so that they can learn something, right? Because, I mean, look at Dr. Peter's work. He says it everywhere he goes, that a horse who is in the sympathetic cannot learn. So if this student comes to you with their horse and the horse is looking at you like, can you kind of help here? Because this is itchy, right? Mm-hmm. Which is animal communication, by the way. But when a person comes to you in that scenario, you as the clinician have the option to just take a can opener to their fear and say, you really have no business being afraid of this horse. You're messing up. Come on, and approach it with that kind of a hard fist. What do we think that's going to do? Is that going to put the person in parasympathetic so that they can learn? Or is it going to keep them in sympathetic so they just build more layers of fear to have to undo in another scenario somewhere else down the line, or, fall off their horse because they can't move their joints because they're so much in fear? So this is where, the more clear we can be as clinicians, what is it that I have to offer here? And how do I want to offer it? What space do I want to offer this person? I think that's when we can't help acknowledge that teachers are healers. Anybody that welcomes a student and tries to make it easier for them to learn is a healer, right? And this is why I really love Mark's approach, Mark Rashid. He knows what he is there to offer. And there are times when people will ask him, well, I know my emotions are messed up. Can you just, teach me how to be more like you? Teach me how to be more okay in my emotions. And I've heard him say it so many times. His way is to say, that's above my pay grade. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help with this horse. Through the way he helps with the horse, people can heal on emotional levels. They can heal in their hearts. It's proven because of the way he creates a space where he doesn't need you to be different. But if you want to be different, here's an option, right? And so this is, again, where to me, it's the clinician's level of self-awareness that offers the space for the person to learn as much as is there to learn. But just like horses, people aren't going to learn if they are in tension and defense and in that place of self-inflicted perfectionism that, they don't have any space. Their cup is full of anxiety already. And I could tell them all day long their horse isn't dangerous and they're not going to believe me, right? So this is why, actually, it's part of why all of my work has gone in the direction that it has, is to help teachers find the place in themselves where they know what okay feels like, whether they're scared or anxious or not. It's okay, because it is your presence that's going to communicate that before words far more than the teachings, right? That's why we're drawn to certain teachers and not to others, because some teachers you say, oh, they just make me nervous. That's what we're talking about. Other teachers, they make me feel calm and okay. That's what we're talking about. That's the place of no words that we're all tapped into. And the more we get curious about it and start weaving and integrating that subtle awareness into what you're calling reality, which, I could argue that the subtle is far more real than what most people call reality, that when that stuff is all starts to get woven together, or at least is allowed the space to weave together, that's what starts to generate that feeling of wholeness and okay in my body, and my ability to recognize what feels threatening versus what is actually dangerous, because those can be two different things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, why don't we tell you what, why don't we do our sponsor right now for this episode before I forget about that?
Perfect.
So I went a little different way for you this time. We went kind of full on psychic last time. We're going to go full on science this time. So our sponsor for this episode is the Mini Doodle Horse Ranch. Have you ever found it frustrating that in this day and age where they can splice elephant DNA into frozen mastodons to reintroduce the species and put bacteria DNA into cotton so that it makes its own pesticide for insect resistance, that we don't have a dog horse cross yet in the pet world? So did we. Make sure you're sitting down for this. We've combined miniature horses with labradoodles for the world's first mini doodle horses, the Dwarses. Have you ever wanted to bring that pony inside and cuddle on the couch with him? Do you wish they were easier to potty train and play fetch with? How about a mini that has a long wavy coat or curly mass that can be sculpted? How about a small horse that's also hypoallergenic? What if your mini horse wagged its tail with delight? Wait no longer. The Mini Doodle Horse Ranch has you covered. If you'd like to join our waiting list, it's a simple matter of a picture of you at one of Diddy's white parties, or if you've ever helped finance a Harvey Weinstein picture, you're immediately eligible to put down a $200,000 deposit and join the wait list. You will also need to sign a waiver and take some classes with us on care of your new family member. As this is cutting edge science, there are some things we're still working on. For instance, 6.4 of them glow in the dark, and we don't know why. Those tend to only eat lithium batteries. We're considering branching those away from the pet trade and contracting them out as waste disposal units. Another 14.68 only eat cheese made from donkey milk and are hooved on the back but have front paws and somehow suffer from lupus. The good news is that they seem to be immune to colic and ulcers. With a full set of canines, we do advise you get the treat feeding under control ASAP. But just think how much fun you'll have and all the attention you'll get with your new designer cross species breed. Order your dwarfs today.
Wow. It is again, it's a mystery to me that they feel that I so fully represent what they are building in the world. Like, I would have never have guessed.
Don't you think before we start playing God with Species, we should have a vote like the whole mastodon and elephant? That's actually happening. That is legit science happening in Russia. They have created a beast that went extinct 12,000 years ago or whatever. And I mean, has no one else watched Jurassic Park? Anyway, just a thought.
It's just a thought. I know. It's the same with all the AI and quantum computing and all the things. There's people that could use some food that isn't, spliced with anything, is just delicious and nutritious. And, that's kind of the beauty of being human on this planet, is and what I call love, which is the space within which everything else is happening. We are free to do whatever we want, right? That's what love is. There's no judgment. And then you see some people going this direction with their horses, in that direction with their families, in this other direction with themselves, and with science and technology and all of that stuff. And the question comes down to how much energy do I want to put into judging it, or would I prefer to put my energy into creating what I want to see here on the planet? Because there are more people who would love to go in that direction and maybe just don't necessarily have the skills or the tools or the vision, right? That's why it's so important for us to talk and share the vision of whether it's how to recognize if your horse is acting from old trauma or just responding to the moment, right? A vision for people to be clear about that is a beautiful vision. And we can call it a training program. We can call it a clinic. But it's so important to share these things, right? How to live in the world without being completely dominated by emotions. Like, does life exist without overwhelm? Absolutely. So here's a vision, and here's some ways to get there. Like, it's so valuable. People think like, oh no, I couldn't ever turn that into a business. That'd never fly. Nobody cares. All of that comes from that perfection filter. Honestly, I can't share myself unless it looks like this, that, or the other, or nobody will pay me for it. So therefore, I'm just going to not do it. Well, I am living proof that you can continue to share absolutely beautiful things when nobody pays you for them. And then there's other ways to build stuff. So it's so valuable for people to recognize what their heart wants, the way love wants to move through them, and find any way to share it just because that's how it feels, because that feels true.
Could you imagine the sales pitch that took place whenever somebody was pitching bottled water for the first time? Okay, this falls from free from the sky, but we're gonna, it's the classic Eskimos and ice thing. But hey, it's a huge industry now.
Oh man, and it's a brutal, vicious industry from what I understand. Humans are not entitled to free water, according to Nestle. At least that's the quote I saw.
Yeah.
Humans are very creative. It's funny, like it does kind of go back to what you were saying, people, like there's so much abundance in life when a life is just allowed to be itself. And humans started thinking, well, what do we do with all of this life? And then humans started to think, well, maybe it's better to have more. Maybe if I have more apples, that's better. So then somebody thought, well, if I need more apples, because more apples is better, I could take your apples and then I wouldn't have to work so hard, which is also better. All of that good, bad, better, right, wrong, should, shouldn't, it all falls in that realm of polarity, of judgment, of opinion. And that's what leads to emotions. It's actually kind of mathematical. Emotions are different than states of being, like gratitude and joy. But they're all energetic fields, and we get to cultivate and create and play with any of them. It just might take some getting used to the language, right? Everybody's doing it already. They just might not be aware of it. They might not use that language, but it's already happening everywhere. It's how our world has been created.
We could talk about morality for a long time there and all of that. But I want to get into Dauphin. So your cell-born horse that you talked about. And the first question I have here is, so that we have kind of the map, like when you come across this horse and go to the sale barn, you mentioned you're getting out of a marriage. So like how old are you? What's your horse experience at this point? Is this pre-animal communicator training or what? So like where are you when you enter this situation?
This was about 2001. And yes, it was before. Yeah, it was before all the animal communication training. Except ironically, when I was 16, I met this woman because she came to the barn where I was riding. And I was holding a horse for her while she was doing a reading. And I'm like, I can do everything you're doing. Like, I didn't say that out loud because I was way too repressed at the time. So I was introduced to her when I was 16, but didn't meet back up or didn't have any clue about, being an animal communicator until like 2002 or 2003. So before the animal communication stuff, it was about 2001. That would have meant what was my age? 30-ish, 31. And my horse experience to that point was, riding lessons as a kid, went to school at UC Davis, worked at the reproduction barn, the horse barn on campus at UC Davis, did plenty of internships in handled a bunch of yearlings, looked for any opportunity to be with horses because riding never seemed like the thing for me, like doing the riding school thing. Always felt yucky to me, and I wanted something else. But I also didn't really have a lot of money. So I just looked for opportunities to work with horses and would basically spend all of my time helping horses feel more comfortable in the world of humans. And that looked like healing. It looked like training. I had been fired for being too kind before that because I wasn't willing to hit the horse. And so I got fired. And I was fired because I was told I didn't know what I was doing because there were no problems. And I was just going slow with the horse, and everything looked to that person like all I was doing was using their horse to enjoy myself. Right. Like, and I wasn't accomplishing anything. But that was when I was younger as well. And I didn't have as much of a capacity to talk about what I was doing. But it was pretty devastating. So I had worked with shires up to that point, teaching young horses to drive, and really just any opportunity that I had, for people to help people and their horses. Very unconventional stuff leading up to that.
So you've got a college degree in equine repro and management at this point, but have you been like a horse professional? I guess you said you'd been doing some training and stuff like that. So like what level of experience would you give yourself at the time that you're not newbie, but
no, I would say quite advanced. I mean, I had taken jobs to manage barns and start horses and work with horses, but it was unconventional.
So when you raised your hand and bought this horse and they're warning you about it, like you had a level of earned confidence already. This wasn't you just stepped into a whole new world kind of a thing.
No, I knew exactly how I was going to handle this. I knew exactly what I was doing. And there was an absolute absence of fear, total, like beyond confidence. It was more like, people, come on. Okay, then I'm just going to do this. Right. I knew exactly what the situation was going to require.
I like that. I get that. I definitely have that feeling that I can do pretty much anything with a horse that I want to do. You just get out of my way and let me do what I need to do, and we're going to be fine. So
yeah, because often the hiccups come when, I'm trying to build something that somebody else wants to see, right? Like if you say, Kerri, take this quarter horse and turn him into a, meter two jumper and make him do it because he's athletic and he should be able to do it. No, thanks. I can't do that. I'm going to listen to who the horse is and what they see for themselves. And it doesn't mean every horse wants to go out to pasture. It means, what's this horse curious about? And what's the situation? How can we help? So I think that's why sometimes it seems like I don't know what I'm doing, because what I want to do is what is in the highest and best good for everybody. And just a lot of the times there's a lot of interference in that conversation. Oh my God. And you've got the cutest little parrot on your shoulder right now.
Yeah, this is Runty.
Oh my God.
We got way too many barn cats around here right now, and this one was the runt of the litter. And then, April had to start mothering it and all that and fell in love with it. And I don't know how, but one day I'm in the office working, and she comes in, and this thing is on the ground. Like, I don't have a clue what happened. I was definitely in the room when whatever happened. The two dogs were in here with me. This thing was in here, and she is laying on the floor, looks dead, blood coming out her nose, a head trauma thing.
No.
And April is bawling her eyes out, and I'm like, how did something something significant enough to do this happen while I'm in the room and I don't know anything about it. And I thought she was going to be dead in 30 seconds. That was about 3 weeks ago. And well, more than that now. And she still hasn't hardly grown. Like, her litter mates are twice her size. And now she just lives with us full time and doesn't know that she's a cat, has absolute free reign of, climbs me like a tree, just like this. And she's a pain in the butt, but
It's
anyway,
perfect.
yeah,
It's
I, she's not a cat. There are a few cats that I actually bond with. Like, I had a cat. I don't say this real often, but she's colored like this. She would actually sleep in the bed with me. She would lay on my pillow and lick my head and stuff like that. She would ride in the car or the truck with me. I would bring her out. She followed me like a dog. I'd go on trail rides. She's following me around. She'd go in the pasture all the time. I would give lessons. She would climb up and sit on my shoulder just like this one's doing, right, as a full-grown cat. And so every once in a while one comes along that I bond with. But that cat was a dog in a cat's body. Like, that was
That's
this
awesome.
thing is annoying. It's not litter box trained yet, which drives me absolutely up the wall.
Oh.
So that's a big problem I have with it. But anyway, she's gonna be around whether I want her to be or not. So,
Oh my
assuming
God.
she's still. I say if cats have 9 lives, this one's down to about 6. She's
Mm.
we'll see if she makes it or not. But anyway, okay. I'll put a picture of the kitten in the show notes or something like that.
Awesome. That's perfect.
Okay, so you raise your hand, you buy Dauphin, you get him loaded in a trailer. What's the rest of the story?
It's actually short and sweet, but literally he came off the trailer like a just old broke horse. He was relaxed. He was covered in wounds. I took pictures like where his mouth had been wired shut, and he had a white sock, but you couldn't tell because it was caked in blood and dirt, things like that. So we spent a couple of weeks just letting his body heal, and he lived in a 5-acre pasture with another horse, and just lived his days. I would go play with him and teach him about the saddle. I brought a saddle to him, and he was maybe 13 hands. He was very small. But I put the saddle on him, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And walked around, did stuff. He healed up, and his body changed, and he just had stepped into a very different world. I didn't get to spend a whole lot more time with him because of the whole relationship situation. I ended up choosing to go back and try to make the marriage work, which meant leaving Dufresne behind, but left him, in this beautiful backyard situation, living on 5 acres of grass.
Well, cool enough.
Yeah.
Let me find. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the business of horses, which is very different from working horses, because now people get involved and money gets involved, and we all have
Yeah.
bills to pay and all of those good things. So as a person who works with people, you have to be good at developing rapport with people, which means a lot of your customers kind of become your friends. And I have not negotiated how to have a relationship with someone. A financial relationship with friends is always tricky and weird. And so how do you navigate that
Yeah.
side of things?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And yeah, it takes what it takes to get clear. And I'm not always clear. But the way I approach it now is, again, it's less about having to be clear with other people. And it's much more clear about myself. What am I offering? Why am I offering it? And if I'm charging money, why am I charging money? How much money? What's the integrity behind how much money? So these are the questions I have asked myself, because there's this whole, a whole internet full of people trying to tell me, I should be making 7 figures by now. And, it just takes 3 steps. All you got to do, right? And, working 5 minutes a day, be like me. I'm successful, right? So
passive income. Yep. Lots of money for no work.
Exactly. There's so much discernment. But the discernment in my journey has been about self-awareness, not trying to make something sellable. Now, at that same time, I'm actually on a journey right now, because if I figured, and believe me, this has been one of the greatest discomforts of my life, is learning the skill of selling. Because to me, the skill of selling has been 100% about manipulation. And people use psychology. People do all the psychology of selling. How do I construct a conversation that plays on what people have learned about psychology that's really going to make you want what I have, right? For me, that has felt manipulative and yucky and totally missing who I am and what I'm trying to do in the world. But at the same time, I've kind of always known there is some kind of a skill within that, about talking to people, listening to people, and having a conversation that does include money. So, like, literally, I put myself, I'm in the middle of it right now, on this path of learning a skill of selling and getting clear what in that, how do I do that without losing myself? Am I manipulative? Do I need to be manipulative? Basically, it's a reconciliation within myself about manipulation. So, just full disclosure, I'm doing my best to learn from every facet here about building a business of integrity that must include money, right? So the whole conversation to me, like I said, is about myself. It's about self-awareness. And there are programs that I charge for, and there are programs that I don't charge for. And there are programs that I let people decide how much they want to pay or how much they can pay. But, all of it is, it's about value, not money. Now, that's also hijacked entirely by capitalism, that idea. So, what is value? Like, what is value to you? I'll just ask you, take it back, throw it back to you. How do you know for yourself what's valuable? What tells you?
I think that's a little different for every person, and I'm weird. So, like you,
No argument.
I've
But go ahead.
studied a lot of I've studied a lot of psychology, and I see that stuff throughout. Like I always think of the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. I call it the salesman's Bible. For everything from the way you shake my hand or something. If you try to pull me off balance, too strong of a grip, all of these kinds of things, like you're that's not going to go for you the way that you thought. You just tried to dominate me, and I damn well recognized it. And we're having a different conversation now than what we would have had if you'd have just answered my questions or whatever. But also, most people are completely oblivious to that kind of stuff. But I very much recognize the manipulation stuff. I'm also, I find it distasteful. I don't want to be guilty of it myself.
Right.
I do feel like, the products and things that I offer are valuable, and I think priced very reasonably, and so I don't have an ethical or moral dilemma there. I think I'm on the good side of it, but I am very hesitant to do some of the things that I know would make it more successful, because I don't believe those things are moral to do. And
Right.
I like you am trying to find that kind of balance of being successful enough with it, but not. I mean, even hell, I just started adding ads for my course on my podcast a few episodes ago. I wasn't even mentioning it there. And then I kind of had the whole thought of like, hell, if you're not even going to do that, like, that's kind of absurd to ask them to listen to a 1 minute ad or check something out for a 3 hour conversation they're not going to get anywhere else. Like, that's a reasonable request. And so I kind of started justifying it to myself. But so for me, value probably comes down, for me personally, time is the biggest thing. Was this an efficient use of time? Did I learn enough from this given the 3 hours? And that's where the justification comes from. I don't think of it in terms of money most of the time, although some, other products, I guess, are, you're going to sell me something for $30. Maybe it's well worth it. Maybe I could have made that myself for $5.
Mm-hmm.
Again, probably has time involved in it. So
Well,
anyway, I don't know if I answered your question there, but.
Well, what I heard is that something that's valuable to you means that it's a good use of somebody's time.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the reason why I asked that is because to me, that's part of the self-awareness of what it then, if it were me saying that, if I were Daniel, then I'd be like, okay, then what do I feel is a good use of time? And how do I know? And honestly, I think it always comes down to, you don't know for somebody else, but you know how it feels that you have made a good use of your time. That lands us in a feeling, right? Like, ah. And that feeling probably exists before words. So that's kind of where I play with all of this. Is how does this feel? What I'm creating, how is it feeling? And is it the feeling that I want to be sharing with people? Because I could sit and I could make an online course and grind my way through it and say, hey, there's good information here. It's a good use of your time. But if it feels yucky, then that's gonna work its way into the way that the course is written and built as well, at least from my perspective, right? Because all of my work is about integrating all of this stuff. It's proven inside out and backwards that you can do the psychology thing. And here's the thing, people, I think, and this is what I'm learning, to some degree, people are expecting to be sold on something, right? They're expecting the sales pitch. And I have found that if they don't get it, sometimes, not always, but sometimes they're not really sure that what you have is a thing, right? Most of my life, I've not done any selling at all. And everything is word of mouth, and people know, like, yeah, there's money exchanged. Good, let's go. And that's really my preference. So I think it's a really interesting conversation. Again, from my perspective, because it always comes back down to self-knowledge and self-awareness. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And is that what I want to keep putting out into the world?
So in terms of courses, you have several online courses. You were gracious enough when we did the last podcast. We did a little horse trading on our offerings, and you included me in you've got a sort of an umbrella course that's going on over the course of the year, where we're having monthly live Zoom meetings, and then there's the online portal, I guess, aspect of it with the videos and the other information and stuff in there. So what are your course offerings? Kind of the umbrella, and then what's underneath it, and then you've got this new one that's coming out now. What do you title those as?
The umbrella one is called Activating and Facilitating Feel. And it is a year-long course because for the past several years, doing shorter courses or 3.5 days, people keep telling me, I need a lot more time for this. And so it was by request that it was turned into a year. And it's about facilitating intuitive clarity and feel and getting clarity on the emotions for yourself, for other people, for horses, and then true two-way communication. That's where it all leads, because by the time we get to that final chapter, it's likely to be spontaneous for people anyway, because they've been organized so well. So that's the umbrella course that will be offered each year.
So I have a question on you there. So will it be, you're going to run one of those a year, so people will have to wait another till September or whenever for the next one, or you're going to start quarterly and start a new group, or how are you running that?
It's a really good question. Right now, it's wait till next September, because there's other stuff going on too. And yeah, I don't know if I could manage like 4 different groups on that plan. That would be a lot. But see, with that, I'd have to, going back to the money, like this is just full transparency. If I did that, that would kind of be a full-time job, running multiple year-long courses. And I would be looking at charging a different kind of money for that kind of scenario, because it's a full-time job. It's got to support your life, right? Mm-hmm. So for this year-long course, my choice was inspired by somebody in South Africa to offer priceless pricing, which is effectively, it's a pay what you can, but we also visit the value that we're getting from it, like to really talk about how valuable is this? How is it affecting your life? How is it rippling through your life? Because value comes in far more than just money, right? Value comes in ability to relate to your family differently. And the conversation that's happening on the online platform is remarkable, what people are creating for themselves. So, there's multiple forms of value, and using priceless pricing was because in South Africa, it took 20 of her dollars to make one of my dollars. And she wanted to participate deeply, but that is not going to happen. So I wanted to make it accessible to everybody, and priceless pricing is a way to do that. So we experimented, and it's wonderful. There's 20 people in there. It's wonderful. There are the online courses that are kind of self-study. One is called Courage to Feel, and it's a really unique approach that we were talking about before. What's the relationship between empathy and intuition, between emotion and feeling, between judgment and discernment? It gives people a different way to relate to all these familiar things that just simplify. It just offers one form of simplification. And if that makes life easier and more fun, then it's there. It's pretty cool, actually. And then there's Tools for an Awakening World. Those are all self-study. But I just created a 12-week series of one-on-ones for people who really want to accelerate, like who want to explore themselves, get clear on their perspectives. When I talk about self-awareness, that's what this is about. And there's an ulterior motive to this one, which I'll be curious to hear how this lands for you. But the ulterior motive of this 12-week series is to ripple beyond what is a pretty familiar and comfortable and safe community of people who are doing inner work, and they get it, and they're doing healing work. And I'm hoping that this course this 12-week series will appeal to instructors and trainers and teachers who are curious how to bring their own intuition into their training and teaching a little bit more, how to find the words for the things you don't have words for, how to talk about feel, how to facilitate feel, and what it takes, what we have to change in ourselves to bring that compassionate space and not just rubber band back into the, oh, I hate working with this person, but they pay me, so let's do it, right? How do we live in the place of no words a little bit more, so that we can facilitate that depth of connection that's outside of emotion, that's beyond emotion, and get to know ourselves with a lot less conflict. Because I think the more I can share that with other instructors, we make a ripple out into the horse world. And maybe we can create a directory on the website that says, here are the people around the world who are functioning from this perspective, and ripple that out into the equestrian world in potentially magical ways.
I think that sounds like a good deal. We all kind of need a coach, to be quite honest. I think people have a tendency, once they become a professional in something, to kind of stop or at least slow learning. They don't really actively push that side of things very much anymore. And I think it's important to do that. And sometimes you need kind of the excuse that it's on the calendar, it's scheduled, I'm going to do this every second Monday of the month, or whatever the thing is. I have time set aside and I'm going to do this thing and work on some self-improvement, or make myself read that book, or whatever that thing is. And I think we really have a tendency, especially in the horse business, because this is not a 9-to-5 kind of a living. And so you always have other things pulling at you that you need to do. Feel like you don't have to make the time for this. You're going to make that trade. Well, make that trade for 30 years and you're as stunted as this kitten right here by the time that happens. So
yeah.
Yeah. And 12 weeks, I mean, hey, you can, I'm assuming that's like a one meeting per week, 1 hour a week kind of a thing, or is it different than that? Or?
No, that's what it is. There's so much that happens when I meet with people one-on-one, like when they're really curious. Like, I'm not interested in anybody showing up and say, okay, fine, change me, whatever. Like, no, this is like inspired participation, like, because it really weaves, personal evolution with helping other people and helping animals. And like, it's not therapy, but it's very therapeutic. So when people really do want to experience, like, it could be a lot easier. Your life could feel a lot easier. Doesn't mean you're not going to deal with stuff, but the way you deal with stuff changes, and it can be so simple. It's crazy simple. And, more than ever, having communities around us is vital. Even just to know that there are other people on your side, even just to know, like, even in the Warwick Schiller community, like after that first summit in San Antonio, the community of presenters was like nothing any of us had ever experienced before. And it takes what it takes to get there. And you don't really know where you're going to find that community till you show up for it. We can build it globally. So, you don't have to leave your world in order to bring more of yourself into it, right? That's the difference. It's not asking anybody to leave what they're doing. It's actually helping people relax into who they really are and bring more of themselves into what they're doing. So I just hope that seems like it's going to be of service to people, because I think the more teachers who reorganize themselves in this way, and find the part of themselves that is at ease with feeling, at ease with emotions, at ease in the presence of other people who are having a hard day, then we really do make a ripple into the equestrian world. It's going to help the horses. And it will help young people not lose their sensitivity, right? Not turn into mean horse people that at some point realize they never needed to be a mean horse person.
And does this have a starting date, or are you just going to, whoever starts whenever they come, they go for 12 weeks, or what?
Yeah, it's unique for everybody. You start when you start, and the 12 weeks is totally for you. And there's the community of people to gather with as well and have conversations. Anybody that's been through that program will be there, and people can connect and talk to each other.
So is that on the Generation of Harmony website, or where would people go to find out more?
It's Generation of Harmony under the Ways to Engage tab. Like, you click on Ways to Engage, and there's a little inquiry form. Just fill that out and I will contact people.
Well, as usual, I've taken way more notes than what we have talked here, but I kind of like that. There's definitely no. So here, I got a joke for you. Do you know why they don't have any long distance races in Finland? Because every line is a finish line.
Oh. Wow, I never would have gotten to that. Thank you. Never would have gotten to that.
I'm a dad. It's my duty.
That is a dad joke.
Oh, let me ask you this. Okay, so this is kind of things happen in cycles. This is one of those sayings that's been thrown in my face a lot lately. And so I'm going to throw this at you and get your perspective. My horse is my therapist. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, gosh, I don't know how to answer. What do you think about that? Do you want to ask me that question in a different way?
My horse is my therapist. Does that mean that horses are omniscient beings capable of reading you like a book, offering you advice, and showing you pathways to change your life, improve whatever? Or like, I could see my horse is something I enjoy spending time with, that helps to lower my blood pressure, gets me out in the sunshine, helps me produce vitamin D, allows me an emotional connection and detachment from my problems in the world. Yeah, I'm good with. There's some facts to that kind of stuff. I think, again, sometimes people over credit animals for what they actually are versus what we might want them to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, the way I tend to listen is for what exists before it turns into words. And then what that orients me. So when somebody says my horse is my therapist, I go to my feeling sense and I go, okay, what's the feeling they use when they say that? And the feeling might match. My horse is where I go to go out in the sun and take the pressure off. Then, like, open the pressure valve, just be who I am. I'm not judged. I can relax. I can breathe. I can be myself. All of that might be in the feeling that I get when the person says, my horse is my therapist. Okay. Another person might use the same line. And when I go to the feeling sense, it might feel really, really tense. And it might feel like competitive. And for that person, they might go to their horse looking for a reflection of their emotions on that day because they can't connect with their own emotions. And if they go work with their horse and their horse says, no way, that's how maybe it's the only way the person knows that they're stressed out. My horse won't talk to me. So maybe I'll go take 10 minutes and breathe. And in that 10 minutes of breathing, they give themselves permission, right? So I agree with you. Horses are not they're not psychoanalyzing us. And a lot of the time I see people, talking about their horse as their therapist, there's often some good projection happening, that they project what their confusions are onto the horse. The horse responds, but that's where they can see it, right? horses are generous that way. They'll just be honest. Here's how it feels. And then if the human can't feel it in themselves, maybe they'll see their horse feeling it, and then they can address it, right? So horses aren't psychoanalyzing us. They're just being honest. They're being who they are. They're not judging us. They give us the space to be who we are. So that phrase is not about the horses. It's about the people. So I listen to the people, not the horses on that one. I mean, I always listen to the horses, but when people say that, they're telling me about themselves.
Okay, my final question for you. If my horse was pissed at me, you'd let me know, right? Like you'd give me a text and like, hey, Daniel, right?
That's so funny. Do you actually want a response to that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Because there's a discernment, and this is part of it. Goes back to when it seems like some people are charlatans, or power hungry, or they want to be significant in your world. There's a really narrow space where if there's an animal that comes to me, that I would pick up the phone and call that person. There's a feeling of truth that would come with it, that blends, like an animal shows up and gives me information about how they feel. That's great. The discernment for whether I pick up the phone and tell the person, that is a very tender discernment. And for me, it's a line of integrity of, again, what's behind it? Is it a feeling of safety or non-safety? Is it a feeling of, is it my own ego? Like, oh, I got this, I'm going to go tell him, right? Mm-hmm. It's really, there's such a discernment, and that's what takes cultivation. Like, people can be born with the greatest gifts in the world, but if they don't cultivate discernment in how to be truly of service with them, that's when we get into domination energy games and people taking advantage of each other or feeling taken advantage of. And it's a lifetime discernment, that one is. So would I call you and tell you if your horse is pissed at you? Probably not. I'd probably sit back with my bag of popcorn and let you call me and tell me that you got kicked and ask you, what were you doing? And, a little bit different.
Fair enough. Well, as always, we'll have links to Kerri's stuff in the website or the show notes for this episode and everything. And Kerri, I certainly appreciate you sharing a little more time with me. It's always enlightening, and you stimulate a lot of thoughts when we talk, and I could do these with you forever. So I hope we get a chance to kind of do presentations together or meet up face to face down the road somewhere soon, and maybe this year. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway,
that would be amazing. That would be amazingly fun. We could cover a lot of stuff with that. So thank you. Yeah, it's so much fun to play and bounce things off of you. And we may come from different places from time to time, but I still think we're both headed in the same direction. So thank you.
And I just had the thought, why don't you've got an event with Wendy, another friend of ours who has the eco tours somewhere around San Francisco, I think. So
Monterey Bay. Yeah.
Okay. So when is that coming up?
That's next weekend. The morning, Sunday morning on the 26th, where we're going out on her amazing electric catamaran into Elkhorn Slough there's a naturalist on the boat who can talk about the ecosystem and how the animals are doing out there. But then we're going to turn off all the engines and let the tide carry us back out. And I'm going to share a couple of tools and like a way to play with gratitude that reconnects us with the part of ourselves that's connected with nature. So it's really all about reconnecting internally with nature while we're out in the middle of the slough in a silent boat and with the otters and the birds. It's going to be incredible. The first of many. So watch this space.
Very cool. Well, I don't see how city people manage it. Like the whole got to be outside with the sounds, the grasses, the trees, the birds, the squirrels, the all of it. That's a necessity for me. That's the recalibration of all of the other stuff. So, pretty cool y'all are doing that. I particularly love getting out on the ocean. That feeling of how small and inconsequential you are is something I enjoy and appreciate. Like how big can my problems be when I'm just a little blip out here on this thing. So I always like that feeling.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks
Well, thank
always.
you. Yes, ma'am. I've enjoyed it, and like I say, we'll have links to all of her stuff in the show notes. And thank you again for your time, Kerri.
Thanks.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dauphin.